Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We will start this morning with a review of Thailand, which will be followed at 1 p.m. by the adoption of the recommendations section of the draft reports on Papua New Guinea and Tajikistan, and by the review of Ireland at 2:30 p.m. We shall now proceed with the review of Thailand. In accordance with the Resolution 5/1, the review is based on the national report, the compilation report as prepared by the OHCHR, and a summary of stakeholders' information also prepared by the OHCHR. I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Chanchao Chayanuki, Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Justice of Thailand, to introduce the report. Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President, on behalf of the loyal Thai government, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation for the opportunity to present our second cycle National UPR report to the 25th session of the UPR Working Group. I am honored to lead the Thai delegation to this important review. The Thai delegation today consists of representatives from various government agencies such as Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Justice, Office of Attorney General, Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Ministry of Defense, Loyal Thai Police, and the Southern Border Provinces Administrative Center. There are other agencies who are not present here today who have been involved in the preparation and providing useful information for today's review. We have also extensively engaged with the civil society in the drafting process. Workshops in various provinces and a national consultation were organized to allow for public participation in the process. The Cabinet endorsed the draft national report before the submission to the Human Rights Council and instruct relevant line agencies to expedite implementation of the accepted recommendations for the first cycle. As recently as yesterday, the Cabinet discussed once again our report. The UPR process received full attention of the Thai public as a result. Mr. President, Thailand is committed to the promotion and protection of human rights of the people. My Prime Minister often states that people may be born to different contexts and settings. They may not have equal access to education and to good life. But it is important that everybody must be equal before the law. And as a government, we must ensure that everyone has an equal access to justice. Thailand's present interim constitution guarantees all human dignity, rights, liberties, and equality of the people. A specific section on rights and liberties has also been included in the draft constitution that will be put to a referendum in August this year. The referendum will allow the Thai people to deliberate on the future course of our country to determine their own future. Mr. President, after the first cycle review in October 2011, in which we accepted 134 recommendations and announced 8 additional pledges, Thailand has made progress in a number of areas. At the outset, we have incorporated the accepted recommendations from the first UPR cycle to our third National Human Rights Plan to ensure more holistic and effective implementation by all relevant government agencies. Over the past 4.5 years, Thailand became party to several international treaties, namely the UNTOC, and its protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, the third optional protocol to the CRC on communications procedure, and the ILO Convention number 187 on occupational safety and health. We have also withdrawn several reservations and interpretative declarations to different human rights instruments, including Article 6 and 9 of the ICCPR, Article 16 of the CEDAW, and Article 18 of the CRPD. We will continue our efforts and are in the process of working to become party to other international human rights-related treaties, such as the optional protocol to the CRPD, the Marrakesh Treaty, the Maritime Labour Convention, and the ILO Convention number 111 on discrimination in respect to employment and occupation, and the ICCPED, which we signed in 2012. Several human rights-related laws were also passed or upgraded, including the Gender Equality Act, the Justice Fund Act, and the amendment to the Organic Law on Anti-Corruption, and the amendment to the Criminal Code on criminalization of child pornography. The Cabinet recently approved the draft amendment to the Labor Protection Act and the draft Act on alternative measures to substitute the normal criminal proceedings. These two laws are now forwarded to the National Legislative Assembly for their deliberation. There has also been significant progress with regards to the penitentiary reform and drug law reform. Our effort to reform the 1936 penitentiary law is to make our treatment of prisoners more consistent with the international standards. Our drug law reform is to ensure a comprehensive and balanced approach. We have integrated the drug laws under a new single code, within which penalties of drug offenses are made proportional. The new single code encourages alternative to punishment and has diversion measures for minor drug offenses to provide drug users with voluntary treatment and rehabilitation rather than incarceration. Mr. President, the government places high priority on the promotion and protection of economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as the right to development. This is evidenced by our success in achieving most of the MDGs and our continued effort to achieve the SDG. The education for all policy, the universal health coverage, and the current policy that intensify the effort to fight human trafficking and corruption are also cases in point. Members of my delegation are ready to provide further details. There are also other initiatives that have been adopted to enhance people's well-being. During these past few months, the Cabinet approved the expansion of the Child Support Grant Scheme, the establishment of the Education Fund, and the project to improve quality of life of the homeless, among others. These measures aim not only at protection, but at empowering these people to fully benefit from social and economic development. Mr. President, our work is not limited to human rights of our nationals. We also render relevant assistance to non-Thai nationals. We continue to host more than 100,000 displaced persons from Myanmar who have remained under our care for 4 decades. The government has also stepped up the protection of migrant workers through the nationwide legislation scheme and the MOU on labor cooperation with 4 neighboring countries. Other policies, including birth legislation for all children who were born in the country, as well as provision of access to education and health care. In addition, in light of the migration crisis in the Indian Ocean, we have joined hands with relevant countries and organizations in providing humanitarian assistance to those in need and finding a solution for them in an effective and sustainable manner. Recent progresses include the decision to grant victims and witnesses in human trafficking cases under trial temporary stay and permission to legally work in the country. The government has also expedited the verification and granting of legal status to students with nationality status problem in the country, of which over 65,000 students will benefit from this policy. Mr. President, despite progress and positive improvement in several areas, we acknowledge that there remain challenges that need to be addressed. That is why we have tried our utmost to strengthen human rights infrastructure and develop necessary legal frameworks. We also continue to enhance the capacity of our human resources, including through cooperation with various partners. We need to further raise awareness and understanding on human rights. We need to take human rights into consideration when formulating policy or performing duties. However, the promotion and protection of human rights is not the sole work of the government, but of the society as a whole. Awareness and understanding on human rights issues will allow the public to know their rights, protect themselves, and not violate the rights of the others. In the shorter term, we have the urgent need to overcome our political challenge that was a result of the years of social divisiveness and conflicts. Such challenges, of course, cannot be solved overnight. Meanwhile, the comprehensive national reform has been carried out to improve infrastructure, enhance the efficiency of public administration, as well as solve long-standing problems such as corruption that are obstacles to the country's sustainable development. There have been concerns expressed on restriction on freedom of expression. Limitations have been in place only to level necessary to maintain public order and prevent further polarization in the society. The majority of the public are not affected and able to continue their daily life and exercise their life, including their freedom of expression. Of course, the real challenge is the need to maintain a balance when enforcing relevant laws, so as not to undermine the exercise of rights and freedoms, especially of those done in good faith with well-intention. Let me reassure you that our commitment to democracy, rule of law, and human rights remains as strong as ever. We will not shy away from this path. Mr. President, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of representatives of the Thai civil society organizations. My delegation has met with many of these organizations during the preparation of the report. I have also learned that many in Thailand have organized themselves to listen together to the UN Live webcast. I hope that we will all learn together from the review today. My team and I look forward to working with all of the partners after this session in order to effectively implement accepted recommendations. Finally, Mr. President, My delegation looks forward to a fruitful discussion and constructive outcome from this very important exercise. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency for this statement and for his presence with us this morning. We shall now start our interactive dialogue. Before giving the floor to delegations for their questions and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 10 seconds for all. I would like to invite all speakers to respect established time limit in order to accommodate all inscribed speakers, as I would prefer to avoid to interrupt interventions. Please be mindful that your statements will be interpreted. You are therefore kindly invited to deliver them at a reasonable pace. We will start with the delegation of Cuba. So I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba. Czech Republic?
The ambassador's coming in. She's ready.
Okay.
Disculpa, señor presidente, muchas cosas al mismo tiempo en Ginebra. Agradecemos a la distinguida delegación de Tailandia la presentación de su informe nacional y le damos la más cordial bienvenida. Destacamos la aprobación del tercer Plan Nacional de Derechos Humanos para 2014-2018, que propugna una sociedad en la que se respeten los derechos, las libertades y la igualdad. Al mismo tiempo, encomiamos que desde el examen del primer ciclo en el país se han aprobado o modificado varias leyes relacionadas con los derechos humanos. Señor presidente, Cuba recomienda a Tailandia implementar en su totalidad, una vez aprobado, el 12 Plan Nacional de Desarrollo Económico y Social y la Estrategia Nacional de 20 años de duración. Redoblar asimismo el empeño del gobierno para dar a conocer a los funcionarios y el público en general los derechos humanos y el proceso del examen periódico universal. He hablado demasiado agitada, pero realmente queremos reconocer los logros de Tailandia en la implementación de las recomendaciones aprobadas en el primer ciclo y desearles los mayores éxitos en este examen. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Czech Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Czech Republic warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand. We appreciate the informative presentation today and make the following recommendations. 1. To ratify the OPCAT and establish a national preventive mechanism accordingly. 2. To stop all forms of harassment and intimidation of human rights defenders and effectively implement measures aimed at preventing violence and crimes against them. 3. To ensure that the right to freedom of expression is fully respected and its exercise facilitated, including with respect to the drafting and adopting of the new constitution. 4. To ensure that all civilians are tried before civilian courts and are granted the right to a fair trial in line with Thailand's obligations under the ICCPR. And finally, to end the practice of forced detention of dissenters in the so-called re-education camps and to investigate all allegations of torture and ill treatment therein. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Denmark warmly welcomes the Kingdom of Thailand's delegation and thanks it for its presentation today. While appreciating the de facto moratorium on the death penalty since 2009 and the fact that the government of Thailand has included abolition of the death penalty in the National Human Rights Action Plan for 2014 to 2018, Denmark notes with concern that the scope of crimes for which the death penalty is applicable has recently been broadened. Denmark recommends that Thailand abolish the death penalty by law. Denmark is also concerned about reports of arbitrary detention of individuals, especially government critics, and incommunicado detention without adequate safeguards against torture and other ill treatment. Denmark recommends Thailand to comply with its obligation under the ICCPR by putting an immediate end to the use of arbitrary detention. Thailand has been a state party to the Convention Against Torture since 2007. Meanwhile, cases of torture continue to be reported. Denmark recommends Thailand to ratify OPCAT and establish an independent, effective and well-resourced national preventive mechanism. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Djibouti has the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma délégation souhaite la bienvenue à la délégation thaïlandaise et la remercie pour la présentation du second rapport au titre de l'EPU. Djibouti félicite la Thaïlande pour la ratification de nouveaux instruments internationaux des droits de l'homme, en particulier le protocole additionnel visant à prévenir, réprimer et punir la traite des personnes, en particulier des femmes et des enfants. La République de Djibouti salue également la coopération avec les mécanismes des droits de l'homme des Nations Unies. Djibouti prend bonne note de l'attention particulière du Royaume de Thaïlande en termes de droits au niveau de vie suffisant à travers l'élaboration du 3e plan national pour les droits de l'homme. En termes de conditions féminines et enfantines, à l'image de la promulgation de la loi contre la violence familiale, qui constitue une avancée notoire sur le plan de la promotion et de la protection des droits des femmes et des enfants. Aussi, tout en prenant en considération les progrès accomplis, Djibouti souhaiterait formuler les recommandations suivantes. Tout d'abord, poursuivre les efforts menés en matière de ratification des instruments internationaux des droits de l'homme et d'harmonisation de la législation nationale. Ensuite, promouvoir une culture d'égalité à travers la participation sur un pied d'égalité de tous les membres de la société et notamment la participation des femmes dans les zones rurales. Enfin, ma délégation réaffirme sa confiance dans la pleine réussite du Royaume de Thaïlande pour relever les défis concernant les droits de l'homme et dans la consolidation de leurs acquis. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ecuador.
Presidente, damos la bienvenida a la distinguida delegación de Tailandia, agradecemos la presentación de su informe y reconocemos medidas sobre derechos humanos como su plan de derechos humanos, la ley de igualdad de género, la reforma a la ley contra la trata de personas y la promulgación de la ley para protección de las personas vulnerables. También es de destacar el intercambio regional de buenas experiencias y mecanismos homologados para abordar problemáticas comunes como la trata de personas, así como el interés para reducir la incidencia de la pobreza en el marco de la estabilidad y sostenibilidad. Ecuador respetuosamente formula las siguientes recomendaciones. Evaluar la abolición de la pena de muerte como medida de sanción para diversos delitos. Y segundo, proseguir con sus esfuerzos para prevenir, sancionar y erradicar el trabajo forzoso, explotación laboral, incluyendo el problema de la trata de personas, particularmente para mujeres y niños que se ven involucrados en casos de turismo sexual y pornografía. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Egypt.
Warmly welcome the high-level delegation of the Government of Thailand. Egypt commends the progress that Thailand achieved in a number of areas, including developing a new human rights national action plan, promoting human rights for women and persons with disabilities, further enhancing access to the right to education, and amending the criminal code on child pornography. We take note that Thailand is in a stage of democratic transition and political reform that corresponds to its specific needs and challenges. We invite the delegation to share highlights of the status of human rights in the process of drafting the new constitution and the efforts aimed at ensuring the conformity of the new constitution with Thailand's international obligations. In conclusion, we recommend the following to the kind consideration of the Government of Thailand. 1. To consider ratifying the ICRMW. 2. To take further steps to ensure that the National Human Rights Institution is in conformity with the Paris Principles. 3. To maintain its effective protection of the family as the natural and fundamental unit of the society. 4. To continue its efforts to eradicate child sex tourism, including through strengthening the relevant penal legislative frameworks. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Fiji.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fiji commends Thailand for its comprehensive Human Rights Plan of Action 2014 to 2018. Fiji also notes that in drafting the report, the Thai government consulted widely with stakeholders, including civil society. Fiji notes that the Plan of Action integrates the UPR recommendations from the last cycle, which Thailand accepted. Fiji commends Thailand for the plan and recommends that the Human Rights Plan of Action continue to be implemented and that Thailand continue to train officials on aspects of the plan. Fiji also notes that Thailand has adopted positive measures to address violence against women and children, including the development of a manual on non-violent approaches to child rearing and caring in various settings. Fiji commends Thailand for the work done to protect children and women and to combat violence against them, including domestic violence, by educating the community. Fiji recommends that Thailand continue to work at provincial levels to execute memoranda of understanding to combat violence against women and children. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Finland has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finland would like to thank Thailand for its national report and for its presentation today. Finland thanks Thailand for passing the Gender Equality Act of 2015 that aims to protect everyone from gender-based discrimination. Finland wishes to make the following two recommendations. First, Finland recommends that Thailand reviews its legislation in order to ensure that all legislation, including any laws regulating the Internet access to information, comply with international human rights standards protecting freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. Finland recommends that the government increases its efforts to ensure the right to the highest attainable standard of health also to sex workers by ensuring them access to health care and services and comprehensive sexuality education. Regarding the rights of freedom of opinion, expression and assembly, there are several Thai laws that gravely restrict these rights. A Thai journalist who was invited to attend the UNESCO Press Freedom Conference in Helsinki this month was not allowed to leave the country. What measures is the government taking to ensure that national legislation on freedom of expression and peaceful assembly is consistent with international law? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We warmly welcome the delegation of Thailand and thank Honorable Minister for the presentation of the national report. Georgia notes with appreciation that Thailand has ratified the United Nations Conventions Against Transnational Organized Crime and its protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking persons, especially women and children. Georgia commends the decision of the government of Thailand to extend a standing invitation to all special procedures. Although we note with concern the reports that official moratorium on the implementation of death penalty has not been introduced yet. With this in mind, Georgia would like to recommend to the government of Thailand, first, to consider the ratification of the OPCAT, and second, to take steps towards the abolishing of the death penalty. We wish the delegation of Thailand successful UPR. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Germany.
Thank you, Mr. President. Germany warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand to the UPR. Germany is deeply concerned about restrictions of the rights to freedom of expression, association and assembly. We offer the following recommendations. 1. End the trial of civilians in military courts and ensure that all civilians are tried before civilian courts and are granted the right to fair trial and to bail. 2. Ensure that the right of freedom of opinion is respected, including by reviewing Article 112 of the Penal Code. Ensure a safe environment that promotes the rights of all people to freely associate and assemble without hindrances. 3. Ratify the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees and implement legislation providing asylum seekers and refugees with legal status in line with international standards, especially abiding the principle of non-refoulement. 4. Establish an official moratorium on executions. Sign and ratify the second optional protocol to the ICCPR and aim to abolish the death penalty. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ghana. It appears that they are not in the room, so I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like to warmly welcome the delegation of Thailand to the 25th UPR session and note certain positive steps that are being taken regarding progress in human rights in the country. On the other hand, Greece notes with concern the restrictions on the rights of free speech, association and peaceful assembly. We would like to submit the following recommendations. End the prosecution of civilians in military courts, transfer all cases of civilians facing proceedings before military courts to civilian courts, order a retrial in civilian courts courts for all civilians convicted of an offense in military courts, and amend the Martial Law and the Military Court Act to prohibit the prosecution of civilians in military courts. Ensure that Section 4 and Section 6 of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, specifically defining the term wrongful exploitation, complies with Article 3 of the Protocol to prevent, suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, and increase the role of labor inspectors in identifying victims of human trafficking and prevent abusive working conditions, in line with the recommendations made by the 2012 report of the Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in persons, especially women and children. Ensure that women and girls...
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Guatemala.
Gracias, señor presidente. Damos la bienvenida a la distinguida delegación de Tailandia y agradecemos la presentación de su informe nacional. Hemos tomado nota de la elaboración del Plan de Acción Nacional para encauzar la aplicación de las recomendaciones aceptadas en el examen periódico universal y las promesas voluntarias. Asimismo, reconocemos que el tercer Plan Nacional de Derechos Humanos ha incorporado las recomendaciones en aras de una aplicación eficaz. Recomendamos que se ratifique el protocolo facultativo de la Convención contra la Tortura y otros tratos o penas crueles, inhumanos o degradantes y la Convención Internacional sobre la Protección de los Derechos de todos los trabajadores migratorios y de sus familiares. Nos preocupan los informes sobre restricciones a la libertad de expresión, la clausura de órganos de prensa y sitios web, la prohibición de libros y la detención de personas por expresar sus opiniones. Recomendamos que se respete plenamente la libertad de prensa y la libertad de expresión de acuerdo al derecho internacional. Esperamos que la nueva Constitución recoja los principios fundamentales de la democracia y los derechos humanos en cumplimiento de las obligaciones internacionales. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Honduras.
Gracias, señor presidente. La delegación de Honduras da la bienvenida a la distinguida delegación de Tailandia y agradece su informe. Felicitamos los avances de Tailandia y notamos con satisfacción la ratificación de la Convención Internacional contra el Crimen Transnacional y su protocolo adicional sobre la prevención de tráfico de personas, la firma de la Convención Internacional para la protección de todas las personas contra las desapariciones forzadas y esperamos en una rápida ratificación de este instrumento fundamental. Honduras brinda a Tailandia todo su apoyo y con este ánimo hace las siguientes recomendaciones. 1. Que firme y ratifique el protocolo facultativo a la Convención contra la Tortura. 2. Que adopte medidas idóneas en la esfera legislativa y de medida política, incluyendo la asignación de recursos financieros en orden de adecuar su Institución Nacional de Derechos Humanos a los principios de París. 3. Que adopte las medidas y mecanismos idóneos, incluyendo la asignación de recursos financieros para prevenir y combatir eficazmente la trata de personas. Y 4. Abolir la pena de muerte. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Italy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We welcome the distinguished delegation of Thailand and thank them for the national report. Italy believes that the rule of law and the protection of human rights are crucial elements for promoting reconciliation, and that the full respect of freedom of opinion and expression and freedom of assembly is essential for a vibrant and meaningful democratic transition. To this end, we recommend to repeal all legislation which undermines the freedom of expression and assembly, and to ensure that all measures regarding these freedoms are consistent with Thailand's obligation under international law. We note with appreciation the measures taken to enhance the protection of human rights, and we recommend that Thailand establish an effective policy and legal framework to prevent and contrast all forms of discrimination and violence against women, including domestic violence, in order to ensure that women victims of violence receive adequate support and offenders are brought to justice. Italy takes also note of the steps taken to increase the protection of children and recommends to ensure effective implementation of recent measures to prevent and contrast violence against children, both online and offline. Italy also recommends that Thailand consider taking all necessary steps to establish a de jure moratorium with a view to fully abolish the death penalty. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of India.
Mr. President, India warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand. We note with appreciation the adoption of a series of legislative initiatives and amendments for promotion and protection of human rights. We encourage Thailand to chart out an inclusive and participatory drafting process for the new constitution. We commend Thailand's acknowledgement in its national report that there is a need for strengthening human rights infrastructure and addressing the trust deficit between government organizations and the civil society. We would like to hear more from the delegation regarding the government's priority for national reform in 11 core areas. We appreciate Thailand's positive engagement with the treaty bodies. We welcome the provision of legal protection for ethnic groups with regard to the access to public services. We encourage Thailand to implement recommendations of the Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons and recommend Thailand to address harsh living conditions in immigration detention centers. We recommend Thailand take measures to enhance women's participation in public and political decision-making. We also recommend that Thailand take effective steps to address educational needs of disabled children. We wish Thailand all success in its future endeavors for advancing human rights of its people. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation would like to welcome and thank the delegation of Thailand for presenting their national report and constructive engagement with the UPR process. In the spirit of partnership and cooperation, Indonesia recommends the government of Thailand the following. First, to continue efforts to strengthen legal framework, including considering ratifying the ICRMW. Second, to continue to support the work of the National Human Rights Commission in line with the Paris Principles. And third, to continue efforts to combat IUU fishing, including illegal labor in the fisheries sector, taking into account its human rights and extraterritorial dimension. Mr. President, Indonesia appreciates the various efforts taken by the government of Thailand on the promotion and protection of human rights since the first UPR cycle. We note with appreciation the enactment of Gender Equality Act, Justice Fund Act, and the amendment of Organic Law on Anti-Corruption. Indonesia stands ready to continue its constructive cooperation with Thailand and wishes Thailand all the best in its endeavors toward the promotion and protection of human rights at all levels. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iran.
Mr. President, my delegation would like to thank the delegation of Thailand for their comprehensive national report and continued engagement in the UPR process. The Islamic Republic of Iran also commend the efforts of the government of Thailand for the promotion and protection of human rights in the country, in particular for drafting the 20th National Economic and Social Development Plan and the 20-year century strategy in an exclusive manner, as well as approved of the 3rd National Human Rights Plan. Mr. President, we would like to recommend Thailand's the following: to continue to address the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities by reducing stigma and discrimination against them in the society, to further intensify its effort to combat human trafficking and ensure protection to victims of human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iraq.
شكرا جزيلا السيد الرئيس. يرحب وفد بلادي برئيس وأعضاء وفد مملكة تايلاند ويتقدم بالشكر العرض الشامل الذي أدلى به ويثمن عاليا الجهود التي بذلت في إعداد التقرير والذي يعكس بلا شك الرغبة الجادة في تعزيز وحماية حقوق الإنسان والنهوض بواقع هذه الحقوق والحريات الأساسية ودعمها في كافة المجالات، ونثمن الجهود المبذولة فيما أجرته من استعراضات واسعة لإطارها القانونية وخاصة ذات الصلة بتنفيذ الخطة الثالثة الخاصة بحقوق الإنسان للفترة 2014-2018. ونود تقديم التوصيات التالية: أولا، الاستمرار في تطوير قدرات المؤسسات الخاصة برعاية الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة بما في ذلك المؤسسات التعليمية والصحية. ثانيا، مواصلة تطوير النظام الصحي وذلك لتعزيز حق التمتع في الصحة لجميع شرائح المجتمع. وشكرا جزيلا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iceland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Iceland welcomes the delegation of Thailand to the UPR and thanks them for their comprehensive national report. Iceland regrets restrictions on the right of redress, freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. We are also concerned by a broader scope of application of the death penalty. My delegation further regrets that human rights defenders are subject to prosecution, harassment, killings and enforced disappearance as a result of their legitimate activities. Arrests and convictions for offences under Article 112 of the Penal Code have dramatically escalated. Such actions are unacceptable and will only serve to undermine Thailand's path towards a representative and full-fledged democracy. Iceland would like to make the following recommendations to Thailand. Immediately end all infringement on the rights of freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly under Section 44 of the 2014 Interim Constitution, the Computer Crimes Act and Articles 112 and 116 of the Penal Code, and unconditionally release persons detained or imprisoned for exercising these rights. Immediately establish a moratorium on executions with a view to abolishing the death penalty, and immediately set a timetable for return to them.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We commend Thailand's efforts since the last review to promote and protect human rights, in particular the formulation of its third National Human Rights Plan. Japan recommends that Thailand further improve its human rights situation, including by ensuring civil and political rights such as freedom of expression and political activities. Japan welcomes Thailand's active implementation of measures to combat human trafficking. We expect Thailand to reinforce such measures through systematic information gathering and comprehensive support for victims. We strongly expect early progress in the legal procedures for still unresolved cases for enforced disappearance in Thailand. Japan recommends that Thailand takes the necessary measures for the ratification of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. We welcome advances in Thailand's social security policies. Japan recommends that Thailand improves access to health, education and social welfare for vulnerable groups, including for those in rural areas, ethnic minorities, women, migrants and refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Kazakhstan has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kazakhstan extends a warm welcome to the distinguished delegation of Thailand participating in this UPR working group session and thanks it for the presentation of the national report. We note with appreciation a number of positive steps taken by Thailand since its first UPR cycle to further improve its national human rights protection system. We refer in particular to the ratification of the UN TOC and its protocol, to the signing of the UN Convention on Enforced Disappearances, and to the adoption of a number of national legislative acts aimed to further strengthen the promotion and protection of human rights in the country. We welcome the issuance by Thailand of the standing invitation to special procedures mandate holders and invite the Thai government to respond positively to requested visits. In the spirit of cooperation, the Republic of Kazakhstan would like to make the following recommendations to the kind consideration of Thailand. Expedite the ratification of the UN Convention on Enforced Disappearances, signed in 2012. Consider ratifying the OPCAT and the 1951 Refugee Convention. Step up efforts to effectively combat violence against women and children, and take concrete measures to eradicate child labor and ensure boys and girls primary and secondary school completion. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kuwait.
السيد الرئيس، يرحب وفد بلادي برئيس وفد جمهورية تايلاند الصديقة والوفد المرافق له، ويثني على التقرير المقدم والعرض القيم المصاحب له، ويثمن المساعي الحثيثة التي بذلتها الدولة تجاه صون وتعزيز حقوق الإنسان منذ الاستعراض الأول، والتي تؤكد اهتمام الدولة في تنمية هذا المجال الحيوي. إن جمهورية تايلاند الصديقة اتخذت جملة من الإجراءات الإيجابية بشأن حماية وتعزيز حقوق الإنسان، من ضمنها تعهد الحكومة بوضع نظام الحماية الاجتماعية وتحسين نظام الرعاية خاصة للفئات المستضعفة، كما حددت بيان السياسة العامة الذي أدلت به الجمعية التشريعية الوطنية إلى معالجة الفروقات الاجتماعية والاقتصادية، فضلا عن الالتزام بسيادة القانون وحماية حقوق الإنسان باعتبارهما سياستين عامتين من السياسات الرئيسية للدولة. وختاما يتقدم وفد بلادي بالتوصيتين التاليتين: مواصلة الجهود الرامية لتعزيز تنمية الأطفال والشباب، الاستمرار بسياسة توفير التعليم للجميع. وشكرا السيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Kyrgyz delegation welcomes the delegation of Thailand and thanks for the report. We're pleased to note that since the adoption of its initial report, Thailand has made considerable progress in follow-up on the outcome of Universal Periodic Review. Kyrgyzstan commends Thailand for strengthening its national legislative frameworks, ratification of some international human rights instruments, and withdrawing reservations and interpretive declarations to 3 different human rights instruments. We welcome Thailand's policy to promote and protect human rights, especially in social and economic dimensions. Given this, we would like to recommend to Thailand the following. Further address all forms of gender-based violence and abuses by revising the relevant provisions of the Penal Code, Criminal Procedure Code and Domestic Violence Victim Protection Act, to take concrete measures to eliminate child labor and child sex tourism. Mr. President, in conclusion, my delegation wishes success to Thailand in its current UPR. I thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. As an ASEAN fellow member, the Lao delegation warmly welcomes the distinguished delegation of Thailand to the UPR Working Group and thanks for the comprehensive national report. My delegation commends efforts undertaken by Thailand in promoting and protecting human rights in the country by approving the Third National Human Rights Plan 2014-2018 and adopting and amending a number of national legislative frameworks related to human rights. We welcome progress made by Thailand in enhancing gender equality, women's empowerment, and promoting rights to work, rights to health, and rights to education. My delegation wishes to make the following recommendations for consideration by Thailand. 1. Ensure equal access to education of vulnerable people, including women, children, and persons with disabilities. And 2. Advance women's empowerment and greater representation of women in all sectors. We wish Thailand every success in its second cycle of UPR. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Latvia warmly welcomes the distinguished delegation of Thailand to this UPR and thanks it for presenting the national report. We appreciate Thailand's efforts to implement previous UPR recommendations and in particular its decision to extend the standing invitation to all special procedure mandate holders, as we believe that their valuable expertise can serve the country in addressing its human rights challenges. We encourage Thailand to honor its commitment by enabling all special procedures who have requested to visit the country to do so without delay. Latvia notes with concern that since the 2014 coup there have been continued restrictions on freedom of expression. We agree with the Special Rapporteur that freedom of expression and independent journalism are essential for building inclusive societies and democracies and include the right to express criticism of public authorities. We therefore urge the government of Thailand to abide by its international obligations under the ICCPR. We wish Thailand success with its UPR and have the following 2 recommendations. 1. To amend the lèse majesté law to bring it in line with international human rights standards, allow media to function independently and free of prior censorship or interference by law enforcement agencies, and release all those who have been jailed for exercising their right to freedom of expression. 2. To ratify the Rome Statute of the ICC. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lebanon.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. يرحب وفد لبنان بوفد تايلاند، وبعد الاطلاع على التقرير الذي قدمته نجد فيه التزاما بتعزيز حالة حقوق الإنسان في البلاد من خلال الدستور المؤقت لعام 2014 الذي يسعى للمساواة وضمان الحقوق والحريات الأساسية. ويوصي وفد لبنان بما يلي: أولا، تعزيز حرية الرأي والتعبير. ثانيا، تفعيل القوانين والتشريعات المعتمدة لمكافحة الاتجار بالبشر وتهريب المهاجرين. ونتمنى لتايلاند كل التوفيق في هذا الاستعراض. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Libya.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. يرحب وفد دولة ليبيا بوفد حكومة مملكة تايلاند ويشكره على العرض المسهب للتقرير الوطني لبلاده. كما يرحب وفدي بقبول دولة تايلاند ب 434 توصية في الجولة الأولى وبقبولها ب8 تعهدات إضافية طوعية. نحيي التطورات الإيجابية المتعلقة بصياغة دستور جديد للبلاد. كذلك نثمن عاليا قرار الحكومة بإطلاق الخطة الوطنية الثالثة لحقوق الإنسان National Action Plan for Human Rights. يوصي وفد بلادي بما يلي: 1. تفعيل القوانين المتعلقة بمكافحة الإتجار بالبشر. 2.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Luxembourg.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Permettez-moi tout d'abord de saluer la délégation thaïlandaise pour la présentation de son rapport. Le Luxembourg se félicite des réformes notables entreprises par le gouvernement thaïlandais suite à son premier passage à l'EPU. Il n'en reste pas moins que plusieurs sujets de préoccupation persistent dans le pays, notamment en ce qui concerne la liberté d'expression et d'opinion, en matière de liberté de réunion et d'association, mais aussi s'agissant du droit des réfugiés. Le Luxembourg tient à formuler les recommandations suivantes. Premièrement, protéger les défenseurs des droits de l'homme et enquêter sur tous les cas signalés d'intimidation, d'harcèlement et d'attaque à leur égard. Deuxièmement, abroger l'ordonnance 3/2015 du Conseil national pour la paix et l'ordre et veiller à ce que tous les civils aient droit à un procès équitable et soient jugés devant des tribunaux civils. Et troisièmement, mettre fin à la détention arbitraire des personnes réfugiées et des demandeurs d'asile et faire cesser la détention des mineurs au titre du contrôle des migrations. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Madagascar.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, Madagascar souhaite la bienvenue à la délégation de la Thaïlande et la félicite pour la présentation de son rapport. Nous nous réjouissons à cet égard de la démarche inclusive et participative adoptée par le pays pour l'élaboration du rapport national. Nous prenons note des mesures législatives et réglementaires qui ont été prises pour améliorer et renforcer le cadre juridique et institutionnel dans les domaines des droits économiques, sociaux et culturels, mais aussi pour les droits civils et politiques. Nous recommandons à la Thaïlande de prendre des mesures pour l'abolition de la peine de mort, d'adopter une législation interdisant les châtiments corporels des enfants dans tous les milieux et de faciliter l'accès aux services de santé en faveur de toute la population sur le territoire thaïlandais. Enfin, nous encourageons la Thaïlande à poursuivre les efforts engagés dans le renforcement de la promotion et de la protection des droits de l'homme. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malawi. It appears that they are absent, so I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Philippines.
Mr. President, the Philippines warmly welcomes a delegation of the Kingdom of Thailand, headed by His Excellency the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Justice. The Philippines recommends that Thailand continue to provide adequate human and financial resources to fully implement its domestic laws protective of women's rights, continue to implement the programs and policies enunciated in the National Human Rights Plan, and consider ratifying the ICRMW and ILO Convention 189. The Philippines is making these recommendations cognizant of the achievements of Thailand in the field of human rights since the last UPR review. We take note of Thailand's third National Human Rights Plan, particularly its strong advocacy for the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Thailand has been a partner of the Philippines and other ASEAN countries in the region in seeking for better protection of the rights of migrant workers, including in the drafting of the implementing protocols for the ASEAN Declaration on the Rights of Migrant Workers and in implementing the programs of the Colombo process. We urge Thailand to continue addressing the persistent concerns on trafficking in persons for labor and sexual exploitation. As a fellow ASEAN member country, we await the final outcome of Thailand's new constitution, which we know
Thank you very much.
has been
I
done
give the floor
through
to
a
the
very
distinguished
inclusive.
representative of Maldives.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Maldives welcomes the delegation from Thailand to this review. We express our appreciation for today's presentation. We also appreciate the submission of the midterm report. The Maldives welcome Thailand's efforts to combat violence against women and adoption of the Gender Equality Act as a significant step towards strengthening human rights protection in the country. The Maldives would like to make the following recommendations. 1. Ensure inclusive and free education for all children, including those with disabilities. 2. Monitor enforcement of environmental legislation to protect the rights of local communities and prevent environmental degradation. 3. Take concrete measures to combat child sex tourism. We appreciate the measures taken by Thailand to promote the rights of the persons with disabilities, empower women, and promote youth development through the National Children and Youth Development Plan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Buenos días. Damos una cordial bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia y le agradecemos la presentación de su informe. México celebra las medidas adoptadas para intensificar la lucha contra la trata de personas a nivel nacional. Igualmente reconocemos los avances en la atención y registro de migrantes irregulares y celebramos la aprobación de la Ley de Igualdad de Género. Con miras a fortalecer los avances alcanzados, México recomienda respetuosamente: 1. Realizar las reformas legales necesarias para abolir plenamente la pena de muerte y adherirse al segundo protocolo facultativo del Pacto Internacional de Derechos Civiles y Políticos. 2. Intensificar esfuerzos para impulsar políticas en materia de prevención, sanción y erradicación de toda forma de violencia contra la mujer, incluyendo medidas tendientes a promover sus derechos sin importar su religión, raza, identidad sexual o condición social. Finalmente, garantizar la efectiva implementación de la regulación para eliminar prácticas de trabajo infantil abusivas, incluyendo medidas para asegurar la permanencia en el sistema educativo de todos los niños y las niñas. México desea un fructífero ejercicio a Tailandia. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Montenegro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Montenegro warmly welcomes the distinguished delegation of Thailand. We commend the commitment of the government of Thailand to the UPR process. We note with appreciation the adoption of the Comprehensive Human Rights Plan of Action 2014-2018, as well as the close cooperation of the government with treaty bodies. We recognize the efforts of Thailand to address violence against women, and in this regard we commend a nationwide campaign to stop violence against women and setting up of the one-stop crisis center, emergency hotlines and shelters to assist victims of violence. We know the concerns of the HR Committee about trafficking in persons for purposes of sexual exploitation and forced labor, including child prostitution. We would appreciate if the delegation could elaborate on the measures that the government plans to undertake to discourage early marriages due to cultural norms. Montenegro makes the following recommendations. First, to ratify OPCAT. Second, to ratify the second optional protocol to the ICCPR, aiming at the abolition of the death penalty. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Morocco has the floor.
Monsieur le Président, ma délégation se réjouit de la coopération exemplaire du Royaume de Thaïlande dans le cadre du mécanisme de l'examen périodique universel. Nous tenons particulièrement à féliciter la Thaïlande pour le renforcement qualitatif de son architecture nationale des droits de l'homme à travers la mise en place d'organes spécialisés des droits de l'homme de proximité et la mise en œuvre de son troisième plan national pour les droits de l'homme pour la période 2014-2018. Le Maroc salue les efforts du Royaume de Thaïlande législatifs importants, en particulier la loi de 2015 pour le Fonds pour la justice sur l'aide juridictionnelle et la modification de la loi organique réprimant la corruption. Nous félicitons également la Thaïlande pour sa politique volontariste en matière de formation et d'éducation aux droits de l'homme dans les différents cycles d'enseignement, ainsi que pour les fonctionnaires. Pour conclure, le Maroc voudrait présenter les deux recommandations suivantes. Premièrement, ratifier le protocole facultatif se rapportant à la Convention contre la torture et mettre en place un mécanisme national de prévention de la torture. Deuxièmement, actualiser la loi pénitentiaire de 1936 en envisageant un recours aux peines alternatives pour permettre de réduire la population carcérale. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mozambique.
Mr. President, we welcome the distinguished delegation of Thailand to the second cycle of UPR. We take note of the strides Thailand has made in the implementation of the recommendations of the previous UPR cycle, which translates into the adoption of the Third National Human Rights Plan 2014-2018, which identifies 11 issues and targets 15 groups for which specific actions plans were developed to cater for their needs. Passing in the amendments to a number of human rights legislation in view of strengthening the promotion and protection of human rights, entirely the Gender Equality Act of 2015, the Justice Fund, the protection of vulnerable persons and the amendment to Criminal Code to criminalize child pornography. We recommend Thailand to speed up the study on the possibility of ratifying the opt-cut. To conclude, Mr. President, we wish Thailand every success in the present UPR exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Myanmar. I think they are not in the room. So I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Namibia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Namibia welcomes the delegation of Thailand to this session of the UPR and commends them on the presentation of their national report. We commend Thailand on the adoption of its third National Human Rights Action Plan for the period 2014 to 2018, as well as the Gender Equality Act, the adoption of the Gender Equality Act in 2015. Namibia takes note of the government's undertaking to develop the social protection system and to improve the welfare system, particularly for vulnerable groups. We encourage the government of Thailand to pursue these goals despite any challenges it might face, as these measures will contribute to the promotion and protection of the human rights of the people of Thailand. Namibia notes with appreciation that no executions have taken place in Thailand since 2009, but expresses concern about the inclusion of the death penalty in the new anti-corruption law and thereby expanding the use of the death penalty for economic crimes. We would like to recommend that the government of Thailand considers ratification of the second optional protocol to the ICCPR with a view to abolish the death penalty. Second, that the government of Thailand ensures birth registration for all children born on its territory, especially those who are not registered due to the economic status of their parents, ethnicity and immigration status. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Nepal. I think Nepal is also absent. So I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Poland would like to thank the delegation of Thailand for their national report and active participation in the second cycle of the UPR process. We acknowledge Thailand's efforts undertaken to comply with the recommendations accepted during the first cycle of the UPR. Poland notes with appreciation the fact of issuing a standing invitation to the UN special procedures and the existence of the National Human Rights Plan for 2014-2018. However, there is still space for further improvements. In this respect, Poland recommends Thailand to 1. Ratify international human rights treaties, in particular the optional protocol to the ICCPR, second optional protocol to the ICCPR aiming at the abolition of the death penalty, optional protocol to the UN CAT and other main relevant international instruments, such as the Rome Statute of the ICC. 2. Ensure that the National Human Rights Commission of Thailand is an independent institution and functions in a full compliance with the Paris Principles. 3. Engage a civil society in the follow-up implementation process of the UPR recommendations. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of New Zealand has the floor.
New Zealand acknowledges positive developments in Thailand since the last review, including criminalising child pornography and combating people smuggling and trafficking. We also note the leadership role Thailand has previously played on human rights issues. However, we have strong concerns that the protection and promotion of human rights, particularly civil and political rights, have deteriorated in Thailand since the 2014 military coup. New Zealand recommends that Thailand end arbitrary arrests and detentions and ensure that suspects have access to justice and a fair trial. Cease trying civilians in military courts and transfer all such cases to civilian courts. End the use of attitude adjustment sessions and the establishment of training camps. Ensure that human rights defenders in Thailand are treated in accordance with the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. Introduce legal changes to ensure that its National Human Rights Commission is fully compliant with the Paris Principles. Promptly investigate and prosecute all allegations of torture and extrajudicial killings. Ratify the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance and pass national laws criminalising enforced disappearance and torture and recognising the rights of victims. New Zealand acknowledges Thailand's work on disabilities issues. However, we recommend that Thailand's legislative reforms be backed by a more effective system of implementation and monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Nigeria.
Nigeria welcomes the delegation of Thailand and commends our UPR presentation. We further commend the government of Thailand for initiating a new constitution and its pledge to address social and economic inequalities and attaching great importance to the protection and promotion of human rights of all groups of people. It bears mentioning that Thailand has put in place a robust human rights plan from 2014 to 2018, expected to consolidate its previous plans and to identify 11 issues and 15 target groups. We commend the various pieces of legislation it has passed on human rights-related issues in 2015 and our efforts in instituting economic, social, and cultural rights. We further commend the government's effort to protect the right to work of all persons and our implementation of ILO Convention number 187. Mr. President, my delegation would like to make the following recommendation. We urge the government of Thailand to achieve the remaining target of boys and girls primary and secondary education and address equality and inequality in education. 2, reduce infant mortality rate and improve maternal health care in remote areas. 3, address the issues of human rights in pursuit of the economic growth in local areas. And 4, urge Thailand.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Norway.
President, Norway welcomes the delegation from Thailand, and I would like to acknowledge the priority Thailand has given to the improvement of the economic and social rights of its citizens. Norway takes note of the ongoing efforts to counter human trafficking and welcomes Thailand's ratification of the Palermo Protocol. We recommend that Thailand now give priority to the implementation of the protocol and the prosecutions of persons benefiting from human trafficking. Norway is concerned about the restrictions on freedom of opinion and expression, peaceful assembly and association in Thailand. These freedoms are particularly important to guard at times of reconciliation and reform and when developing sound policies for the future. Norway recommends that Thailand propose concrete dates for visits by the Special Rapporteurs on freedom of opinion and expression and freedom of association and assembly respectively. We further recommend that all alleged attacks on human rights defenders are promptly and thoroughly investigated and the perpetrators are held accountable. Further, Norway recommends the early ratification of OPCAT. We also recommend steps to be taken to abolish the lèse majesté legislation and the 2007 Computer Crimes Act, and the immediate implementation of public and transparent proceedings in cases concerning these laws. Finally, we recommend Thailand to cease civilians
Thank you very much.
courts.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the delegation of Thailand for the comprehensive presentation of their national report. My delegation takes note with appreciation of Thailand's acceptance of 134 recommendations, including those made by Pakistan, their implementation and follow-up after the first UPR review. We welcome the steps taken by the government of Thailand to promote fundamental freedoms and protect human rights. We welcome the third National Human Rights Plan for 2014-18, and in this regard, we note with appreciation the important legislations done. The plans for the social and economic development of the people with a focus on empowerment and protection, particularly of women, elderly persons, people with disabilities, children, migrants, asylum seekers, are positive steps towards the promotion of human rights. My delegation would like to recommend to continue to consider protection and promotion of human rights in the new constitution, to continue to consider ratification of international instruments. We once again thank the delegation of Thailand for a comprehensive presentation of their national report and wish them all the success during this UPR. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Panama has the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Panamá saluda a la distinguida delegación de Tailandia y valora sus esfuerzos en aras de fortalecer el marco normativo para la protección de los grupos vulnerables, la igualdad de género y combatir la trata de personas y la mortalidad materna e infantil. En un espíritu constructivo y de cooperación, recomendamos ratificar el Estatuto de Roma de la Corte Penal Internacional, la Convención Internacional para la Protección de todas las personas contra las desapariciones forzadas y el segundo protocolo facultativo del Pacto Internacional de Derechos Civiles y Políticos. Tipificar como delito el reclutamiento y la participación de niños en las Fuerzas Armadas y grupos armados no estatales. Adoptar medidas concretas para erradicar el trabajo infantil, el abuso y la explotación sexual de los niños, incluyendo su utilización en el turismo sexual. Redoblar los esfuerzos para combatir la trata de personas y el tráfico ilícito de migrantes. Alentamos al gobierno de Tailandia a acoger favorablemente la solicitud de visita de la relatora especial sobre la venta de niños, la prostitución infantil y la utilización de niños en la pornografía. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Paraguay.
Gracias, señor presidente. El Paraguay da la bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia y agradece su segundo informe. Comendamos el trabajo realizado por el gobierno de Tailandia, que ha encarado de manera integral el desarrollo de sus políticas de derechos humanos a través de la armonización de su marco normativo y sus compromisos internacionales. Esperamos que el Plan Nacional 2017-2021 permita al país continuar dando los pasos que aún son necesarios para garantizar todos los derechos humanos. Con el debido respeto nos permitimos formular las siguientes recomendaciones. Primero, establecer una política que permita disminuir los altos niveles de hacinamiento en los centros de detención, así como desechar la utilización de cuarteles militares como centro de detención de civiles. Segundo, implementar la abolición total de la pena de muerte y asegurar la independencia de la Comisión Nacional de Derechos Humanos. Tercero, extender a todos el acceso a los derechos de atención de la salud, seguridad social y acceso al salario mínimo sin distinción étnica o por barreras lingüísticas. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malaysia.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand to this session and congratulates them for the presentation of the report. As a close neighbor and fellow member of ASEAN, Malaysia acknowledges the achievements and notes the challenges faced by Thailand in the promotion and protection of human rights in the country. We also note that Thailand has made various efforts in the forms of new legislations, policies and programs, notably in addressing the issue of trafficking in persons and establishing social protection programs for the vulnerable groups. Malaysia views that several areas could be further considered in the future, including addressing inequality, promoting children's rights, and achieving gender equality. In the spirit of constructive engagement, we wish to propose the following recommendations for the consideration of Thailand. 1. Continue to undertake efforts to narrow the income gap within its society and improve good governance in pursuit of a comprehensive socio-economic advancement. 2. Continue to mitigate and address issues concerning the worst forms of child labor and provide appropriate rehabilitation for the victims. And 3. Continue to adopt gender-responsive policies and programs to cultivate a conducive environment for women's development and empowerment. We wish Thailand success for its future undertakings in the field of human rights. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Netherlands thanks the government of Thailand for its comprehensive report. We highly appreciate that the government of Thailand signed the EU Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance in January 2012 and hope the ratification will follow soon. The Netherlands recommend the government of Thailand, first, to restore the protection of civil and political rights by ensuring that the Constitution meets Thailand's international human rights obligation and end the present prosecution of civilians in military courts. Secondly, to condemn and investigate all violence against journalists, inform UNESCO of the actions taken to prevent the killing of journalists and notify UNESCO of judicial inquiries conducted. The Netherlands is concerned about the erosion of human rights protection in Thailand, the abuse of power and disproportionate use of force by the state officials, violating international law and standards. We hope that the government of Thailand will take measures against arbitrary detention and assure its citizens their essential legal protection and the right to fair trial. We are also concerned about the restriction of freedom of expression and opinion and about persons detained, imprisoned, tortured or killed for the peaceful exercise of these rights. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Portugal warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand and thanks it for the presentation of its national UPR report. Portugal welcomes the fact that since its first UPR, Thailand has extended a standing invitation to the Council's special procedures. We also commend Thailand for being among the first states to ratify the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on a Communications Procedure. Mr. President, we would like to recommend that Thailand establishes a moratorium on the death penalty as an interim measure towards the abolition of the capital punishment. We further recommend ratification of the second optional protocol to the ICCPR. Portugal is also concerned that the National Human Rights Commission of Thailand has lost its A status, and we would like to recommend Thailand to provide it with all the necessary resources to guarantee that it is in full compliance with the Paris Principles. Finally, we recommend Thailand to ratify the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture, the optional protocol to the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and the Convention relating to the status of refugees and its 1967 protocol. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Chanchao Chayanuki and his delegation to respond to questions and comments that have been made so far. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the first cluster of our responses, I'd like to give the floor to our representative from this. The first, the Rights and Liberties Protection Department, Ministry of Justice, who will talk about the development in justice system and human rights protection infrastructure. The second, the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, who will talk about the group's rights as well as our efforts in combating human trafficking. Third, the Ministry of Labor, who will discuss labor protection and migrant workers. Fourth, our representative from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who will address the issue of the land rights and the situation in the southern border provinces.
Mr. President, I would like to inform about the development with regard to justice as follows. Firstly, regarding the ratification of ICCPED, Ministry of Justice already submitted the draft Act on Prevention and Suppression of Torture and Enforced Disappearance to the Cabinet for consideration, and we hope it will be approved in principle within this month. After that, it will be referred to Council of State and National Legislative Assembly. The passing of this draft Act will enable the ratification of ICCPED. The Act will help ensure prevention, suppression, prosecution, and remedy for cases related to torture and enforced disappearance. It will also set up the specific offense of torture and enforced disappearance based on the definitions stipulated in the conventions. Secondly, on the downgraded status of National Human Rights Commission by the ICC, Ministry of Justice stands ready to provide any assistance to strengthen the capacity and work of NHRC. The coordination committee between Ministry of Justice, NHRC, and various sectors has recently been established in order to foster the cooperation among agencies concerned. Thirdly, on the National Human Rights Plan, the Cabinet has instructed all ministries to seriously implement the plan and report the progress of their implementation to the Rights and Liberties Protection Department annually. Last year, the department organized trainings for governmental officials in 9 regions nationwide and plans to extend to those at policy level. The development of our National Human Rights Plan is well recognized by ASEAN member states. Recently, we were invited by Malaysia to share our experiences since they are at the beginning stage in drafting their human rights plan. Fourthly, on treatment of prisoners, Thailand adheres to our international obligations. Department of Corrections has drafted a new penitentiary act aiming for the systematic reform of penitentiary system. The draft act passed the revision of Council of State and will be resubmitted to the Cabinet shortly. Meanwhile, there has been significant improvement for access to health care in Thai penitentiary system. The application of the Universal Health Coverage Scheme enhances access to medical treatment for sick prisoners with Thai nationality. To improve the rehabilitation and reintegration of prisoners into the society, the Department of Corrections has initiated the soft prison, whereby the place of detention and place for preparation before release are separated. The department also provides intensive pre-release program for prisoners. Furthermore, to address the overcrowding detention, Thailand has considered several alternatives to imprisonment, including revising its legislative framework. A new draft law on narcotics control has been submitted to the Cabinet by the Office of the Narcotics Control Board, with the purpose to have more appropriate and proportionate penalties and punishments, as well as alternative measures to imprisonment, such as rehabilitation. We continue to provide specific care for vulnerable groups, taking into account their specific needs. This includes our treatment of women and mothers with children prisoners, as Thailand plays a leading role on pushing forward the Bangkok rules. During the past years, the Department of Corrections has received a number of requests to visit our women prisons and share our best practices. Fifth, the ensure access to justice for all. Several Thai agencies provide legal assistance and services to all Thais and non-Thais without discrimination. For example, Lives and Liberties Protection Department has established Justice Clinic located in every provincial justice office. In addition, the Justice Fund Act, which becomes effective last month, helps provide financial assistance particularly to people living in poverty, including expenses related to criminal proceedings such as a guarantee for bail release, forensic examinations, lawyer fees, as well as provides compensation for victims of crime. We believe the fund would help reduce disparity among people in the society and enhance opportunity to access to justice for all in a more effective manner. 6. According to the recommendation from the first cycle review and from the Committee on the Rights of the Child, we agree that Thailand should consider and thereby work towards raising minimum age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 12 years. The Department of Juvenile Observation and Protection has already conducted several studies which helped identify further actions that need to be done when the new minimum age is imposed. Currently, the issue is under the consideration of the Ministry of Justice Legislation Development Committee. The committee also needs to find measures to address outstanding concerns, including insufficient budget, lack of facilities, and readiness of agencies concerned. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we have made significant progress in advancing the rights of children, women, persons with disabilities, and older persons. To protect our children from the emerging threats in the digital world, we have adopted a national strategy and conducted awareness-raising campaigns to promote responsible use and production of online media. We have also amended our criminal code to cover a wider definition of child pornography and impose more severe punishments against the offenders. Violence against children remains a challenge. We have therefore introduced the child protection policy in both schools and families. Prevention measures against child sexual exploitation have been put into place to effectively prevent foreign tourists with sexual criminal records from recommitting the crimes or re-entering the kingdom. Last year, we set up a special task force to deal exclusively with child sexual exploitation cases. All children in Thailand are now entitled to the right to be registered at birth, allowing them to stay in the kingdom and entitle them to basic services such as education and health care. With regard to immature pregnancy, several preventive measures have been implemented. A national strategic plan was launched in 2015 to unify efforts with an aim to halving the current teen pregnancy by 2024. We are now considering the possibility to withdraw our reservation to Article 22 of CRC to accord necessary protection and assistance to children of refugees and asylum seekers. We will continue to promote the empowerment of women with a view to creating a more equal and fairer society for all. As illustrated in our National Women Development Plan for 2011 to 2016, the Gender Equality Act that was recently passed in 2015 also protects everyone from gender-based discrimination, including persons with sexual expression that is different from biological sex. The number of women politicians at the local level continues to rise. We hope to further encourage women political participation through networking and awareness raising. We remain committed to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities. Last month, the Cabinet has endorsed the proposal for Thailand to ratify OPCRPD and sign the Marrakesh Treaty. We recently presented our intention report to the CRPD committee in March and intend to further amend the Empowerment of Persons with Disability Act as recommended by the committee in its concluding observation. Since the adoption of our second national plan for older persons in 2002, compared to the Madrid International Plan of Action of Aging, we have made significant progress in providing care and services for older persons. They now receive a monthly allowance and enjoy the services such as public transportation and universal health coverage. Mr. President, we are working on providing remedy to victims of trafficking in person and bringing the offenders to justice. Last year, Thailand, which included provided assistance to 471 victims, 126 Thais and 345 non-Thais. 317 human trafficking cases are currently being prosecuted in the court of law. 34 officials have been found guilty. We are in the process of amending our related legislation to impose more severe penalty against the offenders. And we also focus on enhancing capacity of the officer in charge, improving victim identification and raising public awareness. This year we will organize training for 120 interpreters in the language of our neighboring countries. We affirm our commitment to zero tolerance on human trafficking. Thank you, Mr. President. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Mr. President, Thailand fully respects human dignity and human rights at work. We are committed to ensuring labor protection to all workers equally and without any distinction, especially on the basis of race and nationality. During the recent years, several laws concerning labor protection, social security, and workmen's compensation have been revised to provide greater protection for all workers in line with the international labor standard. The labor inspection measures are tightened nationwide to ensure effective law enforcement and full compliance with the labor laws. With regard to the women and child workers who are vulnerable, last month, the deterrent penalties with a maximum of 2-year imprisonment or $11,000 fine or both were introduced in case of violations of the law on the employment of children. Female workers in Thailand are prohibited from engaging in certain types of works that can be harmful to them and entitled to maternity leave and protection against sexual harassment at workplace. To address the vulnerability of migrant workers to exploitation and to increase their access to legal rights and social services, our government has spared no efforts to legalize all migrant workers in Thailand through the registration process. Last February, Thailand has launched a new policy on the renewal registration for migrant workers for a stay permit and work permit for 2 years to encourage them to identify themselves to benefits and to be legally recognized. In tracking the forced labor in sea fisheries, since the year 2014, Thailand has been intensifying its efforts in combating human trafficking and expediting reform of the fishing industry. The Royal Ordinance Fisheries has been passed in 2015 to empower the authorities to combat unlawful labor practices in fishing and seafood industries. The infringement can lead to serious administrative sanctions, including the revocation of fishing license and vessel registration. The Ministerial Regulation on Labor Protection in Sea Fisheries work has taken effect since December 2014. Key provisions include prohibition of the employment of children under 18 years of age on fishing boats, compulsory rest hours and holidays, and mandatory side work contract. At the operational level, the Command Center for Combating Illegal Fishing was established last year to coordinate the efforts of all state agencies in the fight against the use of forced labor in fishing vessels. The government has also introduced the Port In-Port-Out Control Centers in June last year. The Special Task Force comprising officers from concerned agencies have inspected Thai flag fishing vessels operating outside Thai waters. The government has also strengthened international cooperation with relevant international agencies and concluded a significant number of bilateral MOUs with key strategic countries to reduce the possibility of trafficking and forced labor and to combat unacceptable forms of work in the Thai fishing and seafood industry. Mr. President, the government also guarantees that workers in Thailand can exercise the right to freedom of association and collective bargaining. The migrant workers can be members and join activities of trade unions and participate in collective bargaining. The Ministry of Labor is executing its mandate in line with the tripartite principle toward revising the Labor Relations Act and the State Enterprise Labor Relations Act to enhance the ability of workers to organize and to bargain collectively, to minimize the conditions that allow for initiating a strike in conformity with the ILO conventions. In addition, at present, Thailand is studying the feasibility to ratify the ILO Fundamental Conventions numbers 87 and 98 concerning the freedom of association and collective bargaining. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, the issue of land dispute has long history and complexity involving various stakeholders from local communities, business, sometimes speculators, and the government. Land disputes between villagers and business companies are settled in accordance with relevant laws. The government continues to ensure relevant laws and measures to address the dispute related to possible encroachment of public land are implemented through a fair and transparent process. As a responsible member of the international community, Thailand has put utmost efforts in preventing deforestation, one urgent global climate challenge, while remaining committed to the obligation to respect the rights of our people and local communities to a fair share of the benefits in the utilization of the lands and natural resources. Evictions are not arbitrary, but are carried out in accordance with the court's ruling. As a matter of principle, those who encroach public forest land will have to relocate eventually. The government nevertheless tries to provide warnings and notice with sufficient time prior to the eviction. Those with limited means will also be accorded with assistance such as housing and job training. Local communities can also prove their cases against the government's claims, especially those who live in the area for generations. Government's technical supports are also available, such as data collection and mapping system. Projects to grant land use permits to allow local communities to live, collectively utilize, and help reserve forest land under the idea of community living in harmony with the forest have also been expedited and implemented in several provinces of the country. With respect to the cases involving the killings of the land rights defenders, the government takes this issue seriously. It is the responsibility of the government to bring perpetrators to justice and to render support to the families of these defenders through available public redress and compensation schemes. Mr. President, on the issue of the southern border provinces, special security laws have been invoked in order to maintain peace and security of the people. Implementation of such laws in the area is strictly based on necessity and proportionality. The government has regularly reviewed the need and considered the possibility to reduce the use of these laws corresponding to the situation on the ground. Officers and personnel operating in these provinces are trained to enforce these laws with extreme caution, taking into consideration the human rights principle. Several channels, including the damage for the injured person and compensation and expense for the accused in Criminal Case Act 2001, are also available for victims from violent incidents to seek redress and compensation. Efforts have also been made to promote development in the region with specific strategies as well as resource allocation, aiming for the safe and peaceful society. Today, people from various parts of the community are encouraged and actually participating with more trust and confidence in their relevant decision-making on issues such as building of local roads and facilities. The government also encouraged those involved in criminal acts to cooperate with the authority by providing them with legal aid as well as exemption from incrimination and supporting them to reintegrate into the community. Various partners, including the UN agencies, namely the UNFPA and the UNDP, as well as the UNICEF, have also worked in their specialized areas to support the government's effort to promote development and human rights in the area. Thank you.
Mr. President, my delegation has completed the first round of our responses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will continue now with our interactive dialogue. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Qatar.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. يرحب وفد بلادي الأمين الدائم لوزارة العدل رئيس وفد مملكة تايلاند والوفد المشارك معه، ويشكرها على المعلومات المقدمة للفريق العامل المعني بالاستعراض الدوري الشامل. وفي هذا الصدد نشيد بالتطورات المستجدة منذ الجولة الأولى للاستعراض، بما في ذلك اعتماد خطة العمل الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان للفترة 2014-2018 والعمل الجاري على صياغة دستور جديد للبلاد يكفل الحقوق والحريات والمساواة للجميع. سيدي الرئيس، تولي مملكة تايلاند أولوية قصوى للتعاون مع مجلس حقوق الإنسان وآلياته، وقد تبين ذلك من خلال توجيهها دعوة دائمة لجميع المكلفين بولايات في إطار الإجراءات الخاصة التابعة لمجلس حقوق الإنسان وقيادتها المبادرات السنوية حول تعزيز التعاون التقني وبناء القدرات في مجال حقوق الإنسان. ونتقدم بالتوصيتين التاليتين: مواصلة جهود تنفيذ سياسة توفير التعليم للجميع لا سيما الأطفال بكافة المستويات. 2. تعزيز تنفيذ الخطة الوطنية الرابعة بشأن تمكين الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة 2012-2016. وفي الختام يتمنى وفد بلادي لمملكة تايلاند المزيد من التقدم والازدهار. شكرا سيدي.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Republic of Korea welcomes the delegation of Thailand and appreciates its comprehensive effort to protect the vulnerable groups such as women and children. Thailand has made important strides in its roadmap to democracy, including the drafting of its new constitution. We commend the Thai government's strong resolve to hold the referendum on the draft constitution this August and the general election next year. Thailand's democracy stands at an important crossroad. As Thailand moves forward to securing sustainable democratic governance, we encourage Thailand to hold discussions on the drafted constitution, which will further provide an impetus for early restoration of an elected civilian government. We also stress the importance of ensuring full respect for the freedom of express and other human rights. In this context, my delegation would like to recommend Thailand to encourage public debate on the draft constitution, to fully respect the freedom of press and expression, to make effort to address the issues of enforced disappearance, such as ensuring accountability. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Romania.
Thank you, Mr. President. Romania welcomes the participation of Thailand in the UPR process and would like to thank the Thai delegation for the presentation of their national report. It also welcomes the positive developments in the human rights field, including the commitment of the government in solving the outstanding issues regarding human trafficking and forced labor, which is commendable. Within this context, we would like to recommend the ratification of the ILO Convention on Work in Fishing. Mr. President, while emphasizing the importance of the concrete implementation of the third National Human Rights Plan of Action, we would like to make the following additional recommendations. To ensure that the UN Convention Against Torture is fully implemented into the national legislation, and second, to ensure that the rights of the human rights defenders are properly respected and perpetrators are brought to justice. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal souhaite la bienvenue à la délégation thaïlandaise et la félicite pour la qualité de son rapport. Nous saluons la décision du gouvernement thaïlandais de soumettre volontairement au Conseil des droits de l'homme un rapport à mi-parcours pour dresser un bilan des progrès accomplis depuis son dernier passage à l'EPI en 2011, ainsi que les autres initiatives prises dans le sens d'améliorer le cadre général des droits de l'homme dans ce pays. Ma délégation se félicite également de l'adoption en novembre 2014 du troisième plan national pour les droits de l'homme 2014-2018, lequel plan vise à promouvoir une société respectueuse des droits et des libertés de ses citoyens, ainsi que des lois votées pour mieux lutter contre la traite des personnes et protéger davantage les groupes vulnérables. Ainsi, tout en reconnaissant les efforts fournis par le gouvernement thaïlandais, le Sénégal lui adresse les deux recommandations suivantes. Mettre en œuvre le troisième plan national pour les droits de l'homme 2014-2018, améliorer le fonctionnement de la Commission nationale des droits de l'homme de manière à ce qu'elle retrouve son statut A. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Sierra Leone has the floor.
Mr. President, Sierra Leone warmly welcomes the delegation of the Kingdom of Thailand and thanks them for their oral presentation. Since their last UPR, Thailand has passed an impressive number of laws and drawn up policies and strategies that would go a long way in addressing the human rights of its people. My delegation applauds the consistent efforts to implement various policies and measures into national laws, including the third National Action Plan, and notes with satisfaction the progress made in the promotion of the economic and social rights, including the Universal Coverage Scheme and the National Plan for Older Persons. Thailand has also issued a standing invitation to all special procedure mandate holders and has met with its reporting requirements to the treaty bodies and has consistently contributed to the OSCHR since 2013. Recommendations: 1. Ratify and accede to the ICRMW and the ICPPED. 2. Raise the age of criminal responsibility to 12 or above. 3. Ensure the minimum age of marriage is 18 for both boys and girls. 4. Ratify ILO Conventions 169 and 189. Finally, Sierra Leone wishes the Kingdom of Thailand every success. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. President. Singapore warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand and commends Thailand's efforts to implement its UPR recommendation through initiatives such as the Third National Human Rights Plan. Singapore welcomes Thailand's efforts to protect persons in vulnerable situations, in particular children. We recommend that Thailand effectively implements its policies and strategies for the prevention and responses to violence against children and youth 2015 to 2021 to prevent and curb violence against children, including at the provincial level. Thai Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha declared last year that the prevention and suppression of trafficking in persons as a national agenda. We recommend that Thailand take all necessary legislative and enforcement measures to eradicate trafficking rings and prosecute perpetrators. Mr. President, last year Singapore and Thailand celebrated the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations.
We all cooperate in many areas bilaterally and in ASEAN. Our leaders meet regularly, and people-to-people ties and economic links are very strong. We take this opportunity to wish Thailand every success in its national reforms and long-term development. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovakia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Slovakia acknowledges Thailand's commitment to the second UPR cycle and efforts to improve the level of human rights protection since the first UPR cycle. We take positive note of steps involving development of social protection system and efforts to improve the welfare system, particularly for the most vulnerable groups. Slovakia also welcomes the legislative progress made to further promote and protect human rights, for instance by adopting the Protection of Vulnerable Persons Act of 2014 and by amending the Criminal Code to criminalize child pornography. However, the imposition of death penalty for various criminal offences still remains a matter of concern. We would like to make the following recommendations. First, to abolish immediately the death penalty. Second, to adopt a definition of torture which is fully in compliance with Article 1 of the CAT, its inclusion as a specific crime in Thailand's legislation, to undertake prompt, thorough and impartial investigation of all allegations of torture and ill treatment, and lastly, to ratify the ICPPED. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Slovenia thanks the distinguished delegation of Thailand for their presentation today. As Slovenia attaches great importance to human rights education, we commend Thailand for its commitment to the promotion and mainstreaming of human rights education into the education system on different levels in order to enhance knowledge and awareness. We particularly welcome the issuance of standing invitation to the special procedures of the Human Rights Council. Nevertheless, several challenges in protection and promotion of human rights in the country still remain. Bearing this in mind, we would like to recommend to Thailand the following. 1. To ratify the Rome Statute of the ICC. 2. To ratify the second optional protocol to the ICCPR and review the imposition of the death penalty for offences related to drug trafficking. 3. To prohibit corporal punishment of children in all settings. And 4. To adopt a comprehensive anti-discrimination law which includes all grounds for discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of South Africa.
Thank you, Mr. President. South Africa welcomes the delegation of Thailand and thanks them for the presentation of its comprehensive national report. South Africa commends the commitment of the government on the promotion and protection of all human rights without discrimination. The promotion of economic, social and cultural rights has led Thailand to achieve several of the MDGs. South Africa encourages Thailand to continue all efforts towards the fulfillment of all human rights, including the right to development, and recommends the following. 1. To withdraw its interpretive declaration on the Convention Elimination of Racial Discrimination and its reservation to Article 4. To give direct constitutional recognition to the rights enshrined in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and to guarantee the enforceability by courts. And thirdly, to effectively implement the Gender Equality Act of 2015. We wish Thailand a successful review during this session. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Spain has the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. España da la bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia y agradece su participación en este ejercicio. En primer lugar, apreciamos que Tailandia haya legislado sobre igualdad de género en 2015. Para consolidar esta medida recomendamos impedir la discriminación en todo caso sin que puedan primar otras consideraciones como las creencias religiosas o la seguridad nacional. Por otro lado, constatamos que algunas disposiciones legales pueden menoscabar y menoscaban la libertad de opinión y expresión. Por ello, recomendamos revisar el Código Penal en los artículos 112, lesa majestad, 326, difamación, y 328, calumnia, así como los artículos 14 y 15 de la Ley de Delitos Informáticos de 2007 y adecuarlos a las obligaciones internacionales del país en materia de derechos humanos. Dado el carácter inhumano, injusto e ineficaz de la pena de muerte, recomendamos la ratificación del segundo protocolo facultativo al Pacto Internacional de Derechos Civiles y Políticos para la abolición de la pena de muerte. En tanto esto no se produzca, se recomienda también eliminar la pena de muerte para delitos que no se pueden considerar de máxima gravedad, como los económicos. Por último, recomendamos definir y tipificar legalmente la desaparición forzada. Por último, reformar las leyes penales para definir la tortura de acuerdo con el artículo 1 de la Convención y declarar su carácter imprescriptible. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the State of Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. President. The State of Palestine welcomes the delegation of Thailand and thanks it for the presentation of its national report. We welcome the steps taken by Thailand since the first UPR cycle to promote and protect the human rights of its people, including by pushing forward the national reform and drafting the action plan to identify targets of each reform area. We noted the efforts made by the government in the health sector to ensure high-quality health care, and we commend Thailand to continue its efforts to ensure that the universal health care scheme covers disadvantaged groups, including persons with disabilities and persons living in remote rural areas that still face obstacles in accessing basic health care services. We also commend Thailand for the steps taken to improve the education in the country and prioritize it. In this regard, we recommend Thailand to continue its efforts to ensure that all children have access to free basic education and to improve the overall quality of education, including by ensuring that teachers are well trained and fully qualified. We wish Thailand a successful review. I thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sudan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of the Sudan welcomes the distinguished delegation of Thailand, headed by the Honorable Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Justice, and thanks him for the comprehensive presentation of the national report. We commend the positive engagement of Thailand to the UPR process and appreciate the legislative developments since the previous review, in particular the amendment to the 2008 Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, aims to further intensify the country's efforts to combat trafficking in persons, and the Justice Fund Act of 2015. In conclusion, Mr. President, my delegation would like to present to Thailand the following two recommendations. One, to continue its efforts to implement the policies and strategies for the prevention and response to violence against children and youth of 2015-2021. Two, to raise public awareness on the rights of persons with disabilities. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Swaziland.
Mr. President, my delegation is honored to warmly welcome the distinguished delegation of the Kingdom of Thailand and congratulate it for the great strides it has made to fulfill some of the UPR recommendations raised in the first cycle in 2011. Going through the current comprehensive national report, one notes with gratitude the high level of commitment the government and the civil society organizations have put in upholding, observing and ensuring that relevant national laws related to human rights were reviewed and reenacted so that they fall within the scope and framework of international human rights standards. The setting up of a national action plan in 2013 to serve as a guideline in the implementation of the accepted 134 UPR recommendation is one of the clear political commitments demonstrated by the government of Thailand. Mr. President, we note with satisfaction that since 2011, a number of human rights-related legislations have been put in place to strengthen the promotion and protection of human rights.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sweden wishes to welcome the delegation of Thailand. We are concerned about the human rights situation in Thailand, including the increased restrictions on freedom of expression in connection with the constitutional referendum. Sweden recommends the government of Thailand, 1, to amend Article 14 of the Computer Crimes Act to ensure it can't be used to prosecute cases of alleged defamation. 2, to explicitly prohibit in law any form of corporal punishment or other cruel or degrading punishment of children in all settings. 3, to develop, enact and implement a national action plan on business and human rights in order to implement the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Sweden encourages the government of Thailand to fully cooperate with the UN in Thailand and to follow through on its standing invitation to all special procedures. Finally, we ask the Thai government to ensure the space for civil society to operate without undue restrictions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Switzerland.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Suisse remercie la Thaïlande et salue le fait que la société civile ait été consultée dans l'élaboration de ce deuxième rapport national, ainsi que les progrès effectués depuis le dernier examen, notamment en matière de torture et de disparition forcée. La Suisse est toutefois préoccupée par le fait que la Constitution intérimaire ne respecte et ne protège pas suffisamment les droits de l'homme. La Suisse recommande à la Thaïlande d'assurer un ordre constitutionnel qui respecte ses obligations internationales, notamment sous le pacte international relatif aux droits civils et politiques. La Suisse s'inquiète de l'application d'articles de loi restreignant certains droits fondamentaux. La Suisse recommande à la Thaïlande de garantir et de respecter le droit à la liberté d'expression, d'association et de réunion, en mettant fin notamment aux arrestations et détentions arbitraires et à tout acte de harcèlement à l'encontre d'acteurs politiques et de la société civile, y compris les défenseurs des droits de l'homme. La Suisse recommande par ailleurs à la Thaïlande d'assurer que toutes les allégations de violation des droits de l'homme par les forces de sécurité, notamment au sud de la Thaïlande, fassent l'objet d'une enquête impartiale, indépendante et transparente et que les responsables soient traduits en justice. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Mr. President. Timor-Leste warmly welcomes the members of the delegation of Thailand and congratulates them for their participation at the 25th sessions of the UPR Working Group. Timor-Leste welcomes the government's efforts to combat violence against women and domestic violence, as well as the 2011 ministerial regulation that prohibited persons below the age of 18 from taking part in village defense training. While acknowledging the progress made by the government of Thailand, Timor-Leste remains concerned about the inclusion of the death penalty in the new anti-corruption law and therefore recommends that Thailand considers eliminating the clause that expands the use of death penalty for economic crimes. Finally, my delegation would like to add one recommendation, that Thailand eliminates the legal provision that states that the age limit of marriage could be lowered to 18 years old in cases where children were sexually abused and could consequently marry the perpetrators. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Togo has the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma délégation souhaite une cordiale bienvenue à la délégation de la Thaïlande et la félicite pour le complément d'information qu'elle vient de fournir au groupe de travail. Ma délégation note que la Thaïlande s'est fixée pour priorité la lutte contre les inégalités sociales et économiques, le respect de l'état de droit et la protection des droits de l'homme. Sur ce dernier point, le Togo se réjouit de l'adoption du 3e plan national des droits de l'homme qui traduit la volonté de bâtir une société respectueuse des droits et libertés. La Thaïlande a par ailleurs ratifié la Convention contre la criminalité transnationale et a lancé la procédure de ratification de la Convention pour la protection de toutes les personnes contre les disparitions forcées et le protocole facultatif se rapportant à la Convention contre la torture. Le Togo formule les recommandations ci-après. Accélérer la procédure de ratification de la Convention contre les disparitions forcées, prendre des mesures visant à abolir la peine de mort. Ma délégation souhaite plein succès à la Thaïlande dans la mise en œuvre des recommandations issues de ce second cycle de l'EPU. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Turkey.
Mr. President, we welcome the steps taken by Thailand to protect and promote human rights in various fields, such as gender equality, persons with disabilities, birth registration, and access to education. We also appreciate the standing invitation extended to the special procedures and encourage the government to ensure that visits be undertaken regularly. Turkey expects that the process leading to a new constitution will be conducive to further protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms, upholding the rule of law, restoring civilian institutions, and paving the way for democratic elections. We remain concerned about Thailand's record on the protection of the rights of migrants. Our recommendations are as follows. Accede to the second optional protocol to the ICCPR. Ratify OPCAT. Sign and ratify ICRMW. Instill a human rights-based approach regarding the protection of migrants and asylum seekers, including the cessation of pushbacks to the sea, while refraining from deportation and formally prohibiting detention of children. Multiply efforts to combat child sex tourism, especially by adopting a comprehensive regulatory framework. Further strengthen efforts towards birth registration for all, with a view to effectively reaching out to disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Uganda.
Mr. President, Uganda welcomes the continued engagement of the Kingdom of Thailand with the UPR mechanisms. We commend the government for the measures taken to implement the recommendation that Thailand accepted at the first cycle of the UPR. And we note that in areas where long-term interventions are required, further efforts are needed to fully achieve the agreed objectives. The report cites human trafficking as a major issue of concern in Thailand, especially in illegal fishing activities. This includes forced labor as well as child pornography. We note the positive contribution of migrant workers to the economy of Thailand. However, this vulnerable group of people have faced widespread abuse and exploitation. To address these concerns, Uganda recommends the following: ratify the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons. Establish a special unit for the protection of children's rights. Put in place legislation to protect migrant workers from abuse and exploitation. Incorporate key human rights principles in the new constitution in line with the obligations of Thailand under international human rights law. In conclusion, we wish the delegation of Thailand a fruitful review.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of United Arab Emirates.
Mr. President, we would like to express our appreciation to the delegation of Thailand for its presentation. We praise Thailand's effort to promote economic, social, and cultural rights, including achieving several MDGs, as well as steps to promote the rights of workers and persons with disabilities, protect children, including from child labor, and elaboration of Women's Development Plan 2012-2016. The UAE recommends that Thailand continue to strengthen measures to provide education of good quality, including the progressive expansion of compulsory education and enrollment for both girls and boys, and continue its effort to ensure adequate protection for vulnerable persons living in difficult conditions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United Kingdom welcomes the delegation from Thailand and wants to work collaboratively with the Kingdom of Thailand throughout its second UPR cycle. We strongly encourage Thailand to engage actively with this process and support its civil society. We have the following recommendations. 1. Ensure that there are no restrictions on freedom of expression, especially for the media and human rights defenders, and that no one faces threats and harassment, including attitude adjustment, for expressing their views, and that all legislation affecting freedom of expression is compatible and implemented in line with Thailand's international obligations as recommended by the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders in 2016. And 2. In line with Rules 83 to 85 of the UN Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners, the Nelson Mandela Rules, to create an external independent inspection body that has access to all categories of prisoners in all places of detention that are under the Ministry of Justice. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States.
The United States welcomes the Thai delegation. We recommend the government of Thailand, 1, lift undue restrictions on the exercise of fundamental freedoms, particularly Section 61 of the referendum law and NCPO Order Number 7/2557, to allow all Thai people to participate fully in the political reform processes, including efforts to produce a new constitution. 2, immediately return civilian prosecutions to civilian courts and resend NCPO Order 3/2558 and 13/2559. 3. Eliminate mandatory minimum sentences for lèse majesté. The United States is troubled by the restrictions on the exercise of fundamental freedoms, including freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, since the May 2014 coup. In particular, we note our concern with broad powers granted to the military under Article 44 of the Interim Constitution, including expanded internal policing responsibilities. The military has used these self-appointed authorities to ban some political and human rights-focused events and to arrest peaceful protesters. Over 1,400 cases have been initiated against civilians in military courts that lacked fair trial protection.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Uruguay.
Damos la bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia y destacamos especialmente la aprobación del Tercer Plan Nacional de Derechos Humanos, así como la aprobación y modificación de leyes tendientes a promover y proteger los derechos humanos. Damos una especial bienvenida al retiro de reservas y declaraciones interpretativas a diversos instrumentos. Saludamos avances en materia de tortura y desaparición forzada y los compromisos asumidos en estas áreas. En línea con ello, recomendamos ratificar el protocolo facultativo de la Convención contra la Tortura, tipificar como delito en la legislación nacional a la desaparición forzada conforme a las normas internacionales y que se ratifique la Convención contra las desapariciones forzadas. Considerando que el tema de la edad de responsabilidad penal está a estudio del Ministerio de Justicia, recomendamos aumentar la edad mínima de responsabilidad penal de acuerdo a las normas aceptadas internacionalmente y velar para que los niños que estén privados de libertad estén separados de los reclusos adultos. Y eliminar la pena de muerte en la nueva ley contra la corrupción, derogar la disposición que extendía el uso de la pena de muerte a los delitos económicos y ratificar el segundo protocolo del Pacto de Derechos Civiles y Políticos. Saludamos finalmente los esfuerzos desplegados en materia de lucha contra la violencia de género y les alentamos a continuar en esa línea. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Venezuela.
Gracias, presidente. Damos la bienvenida a la ilustre delegación del Reino de Tailandia y agradecemos la presentación de su informe nacional. Venezuela reconoce los esfuerzos de su gobierno en la implementación de las recomendaciones aceptadas del EPU. Nos complace la adopción del Tercer Plan Nacional de Derechos Humanos 2014-2018, orientado a fortalecer las instituciones del Estado en la protección de los derechos fundamentales. Con el Plan Nacional de Desarrollo Económico y Social de 2012-2016, Tailandia avanza en la disminución de la pobreza, generando políticas para forjar una sociedad más justa, en la que su población pueda disponer de igualdad de acceso a los recursos y beneficios derivados del desarrollo. El gobierno destina más del 20% del presupuesto nacional a la educación en la aplicación de una política educativa para todos, cuya tasa neta de escolarización a nivel nacional está por encima del 85%. Venezuela felicita al gobierno tailandés por sus relevantes logros y le recomienda continuar profundizando sus exitosos programas educativos para todos, con énfasis en los sectores más vulnerables de su pueblo. Le deseamos todo el éxito en este examen. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Vietnam.
Mr. President, Vietnam warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand led by His Excellency Mr. Chan Chao Chayanuki, Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Justice to the second UPR Circle, and highly appreciate Thailand's recent achievements illustrated in the report. In particular, Vietnam takes good note of the positive developments in the areas of poverty reduction, right to work, right to health, and other economic, social and cultural rights. The attention paid by the government and the people of Thailand to vulnerable groups is also remarkable. Mr. President, Vietnam commends the efforts of Thailand in identifying and setting strategies to overcome challenges in national reform, which would create long-term foundation to the protection and promotion of human rights. With that in mind, Vietnam would like to put forward the following recommendations to Thailand. 1. Establish strategies and allocate resources aimed at achievement of SDGs, especially those related to poverty eradication, equal access to resources, rights to education and health care, and rights of the vulnerable groups.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Yemen.
سنرحب بمعالي رئيس وفد تايلاند الموقر ومرافقيه ونعبر عن التقدير العرض المفصل والقيم الذي قدمه واستعرض فيه الجهود التي بذلتها حكومة تايلاند الموقرة في مجال حقوق الإنسان. كما نشيد بتأكيد الحكومة على الالتزام بحماية وتعزيز حقوق الإنسان الذي برز من خلال توجه الحكومة نحو صياغة دستور جديد يكفل لجميع المواطنين الحقوق والحرية والمساواة، ووضع نظام الحماية الاجتماعية وتحسين نظام الرعاية لفائدة الفئات الضعيفة ومنع تجارة البشر. كما تبنت الحكومة أيضا الخطة الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان للأعوام 2014-2018. إن وفد بلادي يثمن الجهود حكومة تايلاند في مجال حقوق الإنسان ويوصيها بالاستمرار في مواصلة جهودها من أجل تمكين الأطفال من أجل إكمال تعليمهم وحمايتهم من الاستغلال واعتماد التنمية المستدامة بيئيا، ويتمنى لها النجاح في هذه المراجعة وشكرا.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Albania.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the delegation of Thailand for presenting the UPR report today. Albania commends the Thai government for being among the first countries to ratify optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on Communication Procedure in 2012, and in particular for implementing a number of recommendations received during its first UPR cycle. Further, we commend the Thai government for adopting the third National Human Rights Plan for 2014-2018, and we wish them every success in its implementation. While encouraging the Thai government for further progress with regard to advancement of human rights, Albania has the following recommendations. 1. Bring national legislation on freedom of expression in compliance with the international law. 2. Repeal the clause expanding the use of the death penalty for economic crimes. 3. Strengthen the government's measures in order to eradicate forced labor, especially to prevent either child or enforced labor in the specific sectors of fishing and canning companies, as well as to ensure that employers violating labor rights are duly prosecuted. In conclusion, we wish the government of Thailand a successful review session. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Algeria.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La délégation souhaite une chaleureuse bienvenue à la délégation du Royaume de Thaïlande et la remercie pour la présentation du deuxième rapport de son pays. L'Algérie note avec satisfaction l'engagement de la Thaïlande à mettre en œuvre les 134 recommandations acceptées lors de son premier examen. L'Algérie se félicite de l'adoption du troisième plan national des droits de l'homme et de l'adoption des textes plus adaptés aux normes universelles, en particulier en matière de l'égalité des genres et la lutte contre la traite humaine. L'Algérie salue les mesures entreprises pour promouvoir le développement économique et social de la population et lutter contre la pauvreté. Nous encourageons la Thaïlande à poursuivre les démarches visant à améliorer la protection sociale des travailleurs. L'Algérie souhaiterait faire les recommandations suivantes. 1. Prendre les mesures nécessaires pour mieux lutter contre l'exploitation sexuelle des enfants. 2. Renforcer les mesures de prévention et de protection contre la traite des personnes. Enfin, nous souhaitons au Royaume de Thaïlande plein succès dans la mise en œuvre des recommandations qui lui ont été adressées. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Argentina.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. La República Argentina da la bienvenida a la delegación del Reino de Tailandia y le agradece por la presentación de su informe nacional. Alentamos los avances recientes en dirección hacia la redacción de una nueva Carta Magna que refleje las opiniones de todos los sectores políticos y sociales. Esperamos que la próxima celebración de un referéndum constitucional y la realización de elecciones generales favorezcan la pronta implementación de las medidas señaladas en su informe nacional. Destacamos las acciones destinadas a promover y proteger los derechos de los niños, como la enmienda del Código Penal destinada a tipificar como delito la pornografía infantil y la ratificación del protocolo para prevenir y reprimir y sancionar la trata de personas, especialmente mujeres y niños. En esta materia, la Argentina recomienda a las autoridades que continúen reforzando las labores de prevención y combate a estos delitos, como también la implementación de programas de asistencia a las víctimas. Asimismo, la Argentina toma nota del establecimiento en 2014 de un comité nacional encargado de examinar la posibilidad de ratificar la Convención contra las desapariciones forzadas y recomienda a Tailandia ratificar el mencionado instrumento. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Here I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Chanchao Chayanuki and his delegation to respond to questions and comments that have been raised after they spoke last time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the first, second cluster of our responses, I wish to give the floor to our representatives from first, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who would clarify on the issue of civil and political rights. Second, the judge from the Bangkok Military Court, who will address the issue of the use of military court. Third, the Ministry of Education, who will discuss the right to education and human rights education.
Mr. President, Thailand remains fully committed to democracy and human rights. A national referendum on the draft constitution is scheduled to be held on 7 August this year. Volunteers will be sent door to door to disseminate the draft constitution to the public, to enhance the public's understanding of the content of the draft constitution. Decision is, of course, entirely up to each Thai citizen. After the constitution is adopted, relevant organic laws will be consequently passed to pave way for general elections next year. Meanwhile, the government will continue to see through reforms in various critical areas, especially focusing on enhancing good governance, anti-corruption, and promoting transparency. Please refer to paragraph 141 to 143 of the report for details of our national reform. Mr. President, my delegation has also listened very attentively to the concerns expressed on the current challenges regarding the exercise of freedom of expression and the right to assembly. The government has full respect for these rights, but given the political conflicts which the country has experienced over the past few years, some limitations are unavoidably needed. Such limitations are only in place to prevent further social divisiveness and political conflicts. We cannot allow people to incite hatred against one another simply because they may hold different political opinions. The government has no intention to impose restrictions to ordinary citizens who have well-intention. Restrictions are meant for those who intend to stir up violence and divisiveness. Nevertheless, exercising restrictions is a challenge in itself, as authorities may have to take actions to prevent activities deemed to be of a political nature, and that may unintentionally affect freedom of expression. A right balance will need to be made. We therefore need to search for best practices and look to international human rights instruments on how we can exercise fully freedom of expression and at the same time not inciting hatred or causing further political conflicts or divisiveness. Mr. President, on Section 44 of the Interim Constitution, the power authorized under Section 44 is not new in the history of Thai politics. During the past 50 years, articles similar to Section 44 has appeared in other interim constitutions. Section 44 is invoked under specific circumstances and has been used in a limited manner. Since its entry into force, the NCPO has exercised its power under this section to maintain public order and to enhance bureaucratic efficiency, such as in anti-human trafficking efforts, anti-drug policy, and civil aviation issues. On the Order number 13/2559 of the NCPO, effective since 29 March this year, I would like to ensure that the purpose of this order is to enable military officers to render their assistance to the police to suppress organized crimes such as extortion, human trafficking, child labor abuse, gambling, prostitution, among others. It does not aim to intimidate dissenting voices. Defendants in such cases will go through normal judicial process with the police as the main investigator. Their trial will be conducted in civilian courts. This order does not deprive the right of defendants to file complaints against military officers should there be any abuse of power.
The order is in line with the government's overall policy to crack down on any influential figures involved in organized crime. On Section 112 of the Criminal Code, first, it is important to understand that the Thai monarchy has always been the main pillar of the Thai society. The law gives protection to the rights or reputation of the king, the queen, and the heir apparent or the regent in a similar way liberal law does for commoners. As with other criminal offenses, proceedings on these cases are conducted with careful consideration and in accordance with due legal process. Any person acquitted are entitled to the same rights as those acquitted for other criminal offenses, including the right to appeal and the right to seek a royal pardon. With regard to the concern expressed on the Computer Crime Act, I wish to inform the meeting that the Act is under amendment to make clearer definitions in each section to prevent misinterpretation of the law. The draft amendment has passed the first reading of the National Legislative Assembly and will need two further readings. The passing of the law will need to wait for the establishment of a new ministry, which will be responsible for digital economy, as the law will also be applied to online economic crime. One last point I wish to also add is on asylum seekers. Please refer to paragraph 108 to 115 of our report for details. Though Thailand is not party to the 1951 Convention on Status of Refugees, we have upheld our humanitarian tradition and we have provided shelter for millions of displaced persons and refugees in the past. Currently, Thailand is hosting over 100,000 displaced persons from Myanmar and continue to host irregular migrants and asylum seekers from countries near and far. Concerns have been expressed on the need to identify those with genuine protection needs. I have the honor to inform the meeting that we have started our internal process to study on the possibility of setting up a screening mechanism to distinguish those with genuine protection needs from economic migrants. We have also worked with country of origin to address the root causes, for example, through providing socio-economic development. We also work with international organizations and country of origin on assisted and voluntary return. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on the use of military courts, Thailand wishes to clarify that only a limited number of offences have made civilians subject to the court. There are those accused of committing serious offences, such as the offence related to weapons and firearms, that are exclusively used in warfare, offense against the kings, the queens, the heir apparent, and the regent, against the internal security of the kingdom, and other offense as stipulated in the NCPO order, taking into account the seriousness and sensitivity of such crimes. The judges in the military courts must make their decision with even more careful consideration. As of today, the highest number of cases submitted to the military courts involves the possession or the use of heavy firearm, ammunition, or explosive substance that are used in warfare. Since May 2014, that cases have accounted for the highest as 93% of all cases submitted in the military court. So please let's assure that during this political transitional period, the use of the military court to try civilians is limited and based on the real necessity of the situation in the country. The defendants before the military courts also enjoy the same set of rights as those who appear before the civilian court. The military court must comply with the Criminal Procedure Code, which guarantees the right to fair trial and the right of the defendants in accordance with international standards when putting civilians on the trial. all the judges in military court must have practiced law within military judicial system no less than 20 years. They are required to have the same set of knowledge and expertise in criminal law as the judges in civilian court. It is given the fact that in normal times the military court jurisdiction also cover the same set of crime as in civilian criminal court, but also as committed or allegedly so by military personnel. All judges in the military courts are also trained on human rights provided by various partners, including the National Human Rights Commission. The right to fair and public hearing by independent tribunal is granted. The defendants are entitled to the right to legal counsel. The court shall never launch any proceeding if the defendants are not represented. An appropriate lawyer, the court is required to find suitable legal representation for any defendants who cannot find one for their own. The right to bail is also available, and the request for bail is considered on the same basis as in the civilian court. Many cases that are of the public attention have been attended, not only by the defendant's relative, but also civil society and human rights organizations. However, a limited number of hearing sessions cannot be made public due to the safety of those who testify or sensitivity surrounding the case. In sum, the use of military court is limited in terms of offense. The judges are equipped with similar knowledge and experience, including human rights, and the defendants are entitled to same set of rights as in ordinary court. This is to ensure the right of fair trial in the judicial proceeding during this political transition of the country. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, Thailand realizes that education is a basic right to all. Therefore, the National Education Act indicates that everyone has the right to access to at least 12 years of free quality basic education, and this includes the physically and mentally disabled, the disadvantaged, the impoverished, those with learning disorders, as well as members of ethnic minority groups. Moreover, in 2005, we started to provide basic education to every child, regardless of nationalities and legal statuses. Since then, every school in Thailand must allow migrant children, both legal and illegal, unregistered children and stateless children, to enroll in Thai school with no cost, to enjoy the right to education equally to Thai children. Currently, there are over 100,000 children under these categories studying in Thai schools, and we are proud to inform the meeting that the government of Thailand has annually allocated over $10 million to provide education to them. This amount of budget includes tuition fee, textbooks, uniforms, education materials, and extra activities, which is similar to the subsidy that the government provides to Thai students. Regarding human rights education, Thailand can assure the meeting that the Ministry of Education, which is the main agency responsible for education provision, has placed high priority to instill human rights concept to our children, particularly in primary and secondary levels. In our curriculum, we have a separate subject on civic education, which includes rights and responsibilities of Thai citizens. Nevertheless, some human rights concept is also integrated in other subjects, aiming to promote global citizenship education. One of the priorities of the United Nations Secretary General's Global Education Initiative. The Ministry of Education of Thailand has also encouraged schools to conduct extra activities and non-classroom activities to promote human rights learning. Moreover, the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with some international organizations, namely UNDP, UNICEF, and UNESCO, has continuously organized activities related to awareness raising to our children. As teachers play a vital role to education, we also promote capacity building for teachers to enable them to have more skills to design education materials and have new teaching learning methods in teaching human rights to their students. In addition, human rights issues are taught in universities, particularly as a subject mainly for a law degree, as part of courses dealing with international law. Moreover, there is a university in Thailand, Mahidol University, has set up Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies to provide international postgraduate degree on human rights. There are also some other academies providing human rights education and training, namely Police Academy, military schools, and an institute which we call King Prachatipok Institute. The Ministry of Education has also developed an action plan on human rights education during 2014 to 2018, based on the National Human Rights Plan, aiming to set up a framework for the Ministry of Education to ensure wide coverage of education for all. Recently, a workshop was organized for education officers to equip them with a better understanding of various delivery systems, to make sure that inclusive education will be provided, particularly to the physically and mentally disabled, the disadvantaged, the marginalized, and the vulnerable groups. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. President, my delegation has completed the second round of our responses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will resume our interactive dialogue. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Australia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Australia welcomes Thailand's UPR engagement and Thailand's progress on addressing human trafficking. Australia is concerned about the deterioration of human rights in Thailand. Measures introduced including limitations on freedom of expression and assembly, extension of law enforcement powers to military personnel, and using military courts to try civilians are inconsistent with Thailand's international commitments. Australia recommends Thailand repeal all orders of the National Council for Peace and Order that are inconsistent with its international human rights obligations. Australia recommends Thailand reform its National Human Rights Commission to regain its A status and promote and protect human rights. Australia further recommends Thailand establish a formal moratorium on the death penalty with a view to ratifying the second optional protocol to the ICCPR. Detention without due process and widespread use of criminal laws to suppress freedom of expression are of particular concern. Australia recognises Thailand faces political challenges. We urge Thailand to allow greater freedom of expression, supporting a return to sustainable democracy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Austria has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Austria warmly welcomes His Excellency and the delegation of Thailand to the UPR and commends the country for its efforts undertaken since the last review. Austria is concerned by the introduction of the 2014 interim constitution and the special powers of the NCPO, which limit human rights and the rule of law. Other areas of concern are inter alia the minimum age of criminal responsibility or the safety of journalists in the country. Austria offers the following recommendations: guarantee the right to freedom of expression and assembly and ensure an inclusive debate among all stakeholders with regard to the upcoming referendum and the enactment of a new constitution. Work towards ending the prosecution of civilians in military courts and transfer all cases of civilians facing proceedings before military courts to civilian courts. Inform UNESCO on the actions taken to prevent the impunity of the perpetrators of the killings of journalists and to notify UNESCO of the status of the judicial inquiries conducted. and to ratify the Rome Statute and APIC of the ICC, the Genocide Convention, the ICPPED, and the optional protocols to ICCPR and CAT. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Azerbaijan warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand to the UPR Working Group session and thanks for the comprehensive presentation of the national report. Azerbaijan commends Thailand for further strengthening normative and institutional framework for the promotion and protection of human rights since it is first UPR, especially on gender equality, anti-trafficking in persons, access to justice, anti-corruption and protection of vulnerable persons. Azerbaijan notes with appreciation that the promotion of economic, social and cultural rights has led Thailand to achieve several MDGs. We recommend Thailand to accelerate its efforts to achieve remaining targets as well as achieving the SDGs. Azerbaijan welcomes that Thailand ratified the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and its protocol. At the same time, Azerbaijan recommends Thailand to continue its accession to the core international human rights instruments. Azerbaijan also positively notes the cooperation of Thailand with the special procedures mandate holders. Azerbaijan recommends Thailand to continue its active engagement with the human rights mechanisms of the UN for the promotion and protection of human rights. At the end, we wish the delegation of Thailand a very successful UPR process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bahrain.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. في البدء أود باسم وفد بلادي أن أرحب بسعادة الأمين الدائم بوزارة العدل والوفد المرافق له، ونتقدم بجزيل الشكر على البيان المستفيض والإيجاز الشامل الذي قدمه أمام مجلسنا الموقر، والذي يؤكد على الأهمية التي تمنحها تايلاند لحماية وتعزيز حقوق الإنسان. سيد الرئيس، يشيد وفد بلادي بالخطط التي تتخذها المملكة والتي تستخدم كمبادئ توجيهية لتنفيذ ما قبل من توصيات وما قدم من تعهدات طوعية لتحقيق الفعالية والسلاسة في التنفيذ. كما نشير بالتعاون على بعض القوانين بالتعديلات على بعض القوانين، وخاصة القانون الجنائي لتجريم استغلال الأطفال، والقانون الأساسي لمكافحة الفساد، وقانون مكافحة الإتجار بالأشخاص. في هذا الصدد يوصف بلاد تايلاند مواصلة تدابير خفض معدلات وفيات الأمهات والرضع، مواصلة الخطة الوطنية لتنمية الأطفال والشباب، كما يوصي إلى بذل المزيد من الإجراءات القانونية اللازمة لمنع العنف ضد الأطفال والشباب والتصدي له، مضاعفة الجهود المبذولة للتصدي لأعمال الأطفال. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mr. President. To begin, a warm welcome to the delegation of Thailand. Thailand has made serious strides in fulfilling its commitments for the promotion and protection of human rights in several areas. Actions in several areas like the Women's Development Plan 2012-2016, assistance to low-income people affected by economic downturns and disaster, health insurances and access to health service for registered migrant workers, as well as the agreement on the improvement of health care for both documented and undocumented migrant workers are noteworthy. Mr. President, as a friendly country from Asia, Bangladesh fully appreciates the socio-economic challenges faced by Thailand and their ramifications. The national report mentions about numerous such challenges, in particular the middle-income trap, widening inequality and lack of fair distribution of income among people. The Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights expressed concern at the Gender Equality Act 2015 that permitted discrimination against women inter alia on grounds of national security. Bangladesh has following recommendations. One, Thailand reviews labor and migration laws to accommodate the demands for cheap, low or semi-skilled labor and thereby provide safe migration options, and continues its efforts
Thank
to
you very
eliminate
much.
discrimination.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belgium.
Mr. President, my delegation welcomes the delegation of Thailand and expresses its appreciation for the national report. While recognizing that some effort have been made, my delegation is concerned about the situation of fundamental freedoms and human rights defenders in the country. In line with the recommendation made by special procedures, my delegation would like to make the following 3 recommendations in line with its obligations under the ICCPR. First, amend Article 112 of Thailand's Criminal Code to remove prison terms for offences stemming from the legitimate exercise of the right to freedom of opinion and expression, and ensure that the prohibited acts are unambiguous and that sanctions are proportionate to the act committed. Second, repeal NCPO Order 3/2015 and ensure that all civilians are tried before civilian court and granted the right to fair trial in line with Thailand's obligation as a state party to ICCPR. Third, immediately ratify the Convention on Enforced Disappearances. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bhutan.
Mr. President, Bhutan welcomes the accelerated efforts of the government of Thailand, particularly in regard to its national economic and social development plans, which are developed based on the principles of sufficiency economy and with the focus on the grassroots people. The policy of sufficiency economy is similar to Bhutan's development concept of gross national happiness, which strives to achieve a balance between material and spiritual well-being. Bhutan also commends Thailand for playing an active role in the regional mechanisms such as the ASEAN to address the implementation of human rights obligations. While noting the challenges reflected in its national report, Bhutan would like to make the following recommendations. 1. To continue with its efforts to address the widening inequality and unbalanced distribution of income among people, and to accelerate its effort to achieve the targets on reducing infant mortality rate and achieving universal health care scheme, including improving of the maternal health in remote areas. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bolivia.
Gracias, señor presidente. El Estado Plurinacional de Bolivia da la más cordial bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia. Reconocemos los avances que Tailandia ha tenido desde la presentación al primer ciclo y con el espíritu constructivo que caracteriza este examen les recomendamos. 1. Establecer una moratoria a las ejecuciones con vista a abolir la pena de muerte. 2. Redoblar esfuerzos de lucha contra el trabajo forzado y tráfico sexual. 3. Llevar adelante medidas que prohíban el castigo corporal a los niños en todos los entornos, incluso en el hogar. Y 4. Poner en marcha medidas para promover y proteger los derechos de los campesinos y otras personas que trabajan en las zonas rurales. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Botswana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Botswana welcomes the delegation of Thailand to the UPR process and thanks them for the comprehensive national report. We note the enactment of laws such as the Gender Equality Act of 2015, the amendment to the 2008 Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act, and the amendment to the Criminal Code to criminalize child pornography, among others. We commend Thailand for measures taken to eliminate violence against women and children and the reforms undertaken to promote good governance, reduce inequality, and increase efficiency of the justice system. We nonetheless take note of reports of harassment and attacks against human rights defenders and journalists. Reports of censorship and undue restrictions on freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly are worrisome. Botswana makes the following 2 recommendations. 1. Investigate and ensure justice to all reported cases of intimidation, harassment, and attacks on human rights defenders and journalists. 2. Remove undue restrictions and infringements to the enjoyment of freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. We wish Thailand a successful review outcome. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The distinguished representative of Brazil has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brazil welcomes the delegation of Thailand to the UPR and thanks it for its national report. Brazil recommends that Thailand, number 1, repeal existing legislation that restricts freedom of expression and of assembly in accordance with Thailand's obligation under international human rights law. And number 2, take concrete steps toward abolishing the death penalty. We note with appreciation the adoption of the Gender Equality Act in 2015. We also commend Thailand's efforts to combat trafficking in persons. We note with concern that since 2014, the National Council for Peace and Order has issued orders that, together with the Lèse Majesté Law and the new Public Assembly Act, seriously restrict freedom of opinion and expression and freedom of assembly and association. Recalling the incompatibility between the death penalty and human rights, we are also concerned by the recent expansion of criminal offenses punished by death, as well as by the disproportionate share of drug-related crimes punished by the death sentence. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Brunei Darussalam.
Brunei Darussalam warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand and thanks them for the presentation. Brunei Darussalam welcomes the the commitment of Thailand to the promotion and protection of human rights of its people, especially vulnerable peoples. At this juncture, we welcome the Protection of Vulnerable Person Act of 2014, which includes provisions of the social welfare, housing, healthcare, education, and job opportunities for the vulnerable groups. We therefore recommend that the government of Thailand effectively implement the Protection of Vulnerable Person Act to ensure better protection of its vulnerable population. Brunei Darussalam place great importance of the rights to education for all. We acknowledge that challenges in education remain, but we are pleased to note that the government of Thailand allocates more than 20% of its national budget for education. We therefore recommend Thailand to continue its efforts to ensure that all children have access to education at all levels and all categories. Finally, we would like to wish the government and the people of Thailand all the best in its UPR, and we look forward for the continuing closely working with Thailand.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cambodia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cambodia warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand to the 25th session of the UPR Working Group and thank them for the presentation of its national report. My delegation is pleased to note that since the first cycle review, the government of Thailand has passed and amended a number of human rights-related legislation to further strengthen the promotion and protection of human rights. We also appreciate the further achievement Thailand has made in the areas of economic development and poverty eradication, right to work of all persons, healthcare, education, the protection of vulnerable groups, and the prevention of human trafficking. In conclusion, Mr. President, my delegation would like to make the following two recommendations for Thailand. One, strengthen the implementation of the third National Human Rights Plan of Action by all relevant government agencies. Two, continue its effort in strengthening policies and measures to promote and protect the human rights of its people, in particular those of vulnerable groups such as women, children, poor people, and migrants. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Canada.
Thank you very much. Canada warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand and appreciates the presentation of its national report. Canada would like to recommend that Thailand, 1. Repeal Order 3, 2015 by the National Council for Peace and Order and the 2015 Public Assembly Act, and stop the use of the 2007 Act on computer-related offenses, as well as Criminal Code Articles 112, 326, 328, to restrict freedom of expression. 2. End the prosecution of civilians in military courts and immediately transfer any cases of civilian facing proceedings before military courts to civilian courts. 3. Enact the Prevention and Suppression of Torture and Enforced Disappearance Bill to criminalize torture in accordance with the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, and create an independent body to investigate all torture allegations, including in Thailand's Deep South. Bring perpetrators to justice. And 4, provide access to legal status for asylum seekers and refugees without discrimination.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Chad.
Monsieur le Président,
Microphone, please.
La délégation tchadienne salue chaleureusement celle de la Thaïlande et la remercie de la présentation du rapport national. Ma délégation note qu'en 2013, la Thaïlande a élaboré un plan d'action national devant servir de cadre à la mise en œuvre des recommandations acceptées et des engagements volontaires pris lors du premier examen. Nous saluons les différentes mesures législatives et de politiques publiques prises pour renforcer la promotion et la protection des droits de l'homme. Nous nous félicitons de la coopération de la Thaïlande avec les mécanismes internationaux relatifs aux droits de l'homme. Pour finir, je souhaite plein succès à la Thaïlande dans la mise en œuvre des recommandations acceptées à l'issue du présent EPU. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Chile.
Gracias, presidente. Damos la bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia y agradecemos la presentación de su informe nacional. Valoramos la adopción y o modificación de leyes tales como la de igualdad de género de 2015, la Ley para la Protección de las Personas Vulnerables de 2014 y la enmienda al Código Penal destinada a tipificar como delito la pornografía infantil. Como una forma de contribuir al objetivo de Tailandia de fortalecer su compromiso con los derechos humanos, recomendamos adoptar normas y programas que permitan asegurar la libertad de expresión y opinión, derogar la aplicación de la pena de muerte en todos los ámbitos, acelerar la aprobación del proyecto de ley sometido a la consideración del Consejo de Ministros sobre prevención de las desapariciones forzadas y la represión de la tortura, continuar fortaleciendo las medidas para reducir de manera efectiva la discriminación y todas las formas de violencia contra la mujer y, finalmente, elevar la edad mínima de responsabilidad penal. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
中国代表团感谢泰国代表团所做的详细介绍。中方注意到，泰国将第一轮国别人权审查报告和建议翻译成泰文，并向公众传播，组织讨论会，研究具体落实。中方欢迎泰国制定第3个国家人权行动计划，赞赏泰国通过或修订性别平等法、反人口贩运法、保护弱势人口法和反腐败组织法等法律。中方赞赏泰国重视对医疗、教育等领域的投入，采取积极措施保障儿童、妇女和移民工人权利，打击贩卖人口。中方建议泰国继续加大保护儿童权益力度，消除童工现象。谢谢主席。
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia agradece a Tailandia por la completa información en relación con la situación de derechos humanos en su país y destaca su compromiso por adelantar las recomendaciones recibidas durante el primer ciclo del EPU, en particular la expedición del tercer Plan de Acción Nacional de Derechos Humanos 2014-2018. En el espíritu de cooperación que caracteriza al EPU, Colombia se permite hacer las siguientes recomendaciones a Tailandia. Primero, vigorizar las medidas para resguardar la libertad de prensa, expresión y la participación amplia de diversos sectores en la vida política y pública. 2. Reforzar las medidas de reducción del daño dirigida a los consumidores de drogas con el objetivo de evitar efectos perjudiciales para la salud, entre ellos el aumento de las infecciones por el VIH y la hepatitis. Colombia pone a disposición de Tailandia su experiencia en estos campos. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Congo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La République du Congo salue la délégation du Royaume de Thaïlande et la remercie pour la présentation de son second rapport national. Le Congo apprécie favorablement les informations contenues dans ce rapport et se félicite de l'importance attachée par la Thaïlande au respect de l'état de droit, à la protection des droits de l'homme, à la lutte contre les inégalités sociales et économiques. Nous formulons les recommandations suivantes. 1. Accentuer la lutte contre la pédopornographie pour mieux protéger les enfants. 2. Accélérer la procédure d'adoption de la loi sur la prévention et la répression de la torture et des disparitions forcées. 3. Modifier la loi pénitentiaire datant de 1936 en vue d'une réforme adaptée au système pénitentiaire thaïlandais. Nous souhaitons plein succès à la Thaïlande et je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Next, the distinguished representative of Costa Rica has the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. La delegación de Costa Rica da la bienvenida a la delegación de Tailandia y agradece por la presentación de su informe nacional. Destacamos con satisfacción su cooperación con el Sistema Universal de Derechos Humanos, de lo que da cuenta la presentación al día de todos los informes de los convenios de los que son parte, así como la formulación de la invitación abierta para la visita de los procedimientos especiales y el retiro de varias reservas o declaraciones interpretativas después del primer ciclo del EPU. Como firme creyente en la democracia, a Costa Rica le preocupa que un gobierno electo sea depuesto por fuerzas militares. Hacemos votos para que en 2017 se lleven a cabo elecciones libres, inclusivas y participativas. Nos preocupa también el juzgamiento de civiles en cortes militares, así como la aplicación indefinida de leyes propias de estados de excepción. Recomendamos adoptar medidas para adoptar el principio del juez natural, de forma de que las personas civiles puedan ser juzgadas en tribunales ordinarios. Tomar medidas para asegurar que los derechos de asociación pacífica, libertad de expresión y libertad de reunión, especialmente en el contexto de las protestas pacíficas. Ratificar el Estatuto de Roma de la Corte Penal Internacional. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais tout d'abord chaleureusement saluer la délégation thaïlandaise. La France se félicite de la signature de la Convention internationale contre les disparitions forcées par la Thaïlande. La France souhaite faire les recommandations suivantes. Ratifier cette Convention contre les disparitions forcées, ratifier le protocole facultatif à la Convention contre la torture, commuer les peines de mort en vue d'abolir la peine capitale, garantir la protection des libertés d'opinion et d'expression, renforcer la Commission nationale des droits de l'homme en accord avec les principes de Paris, donner un statut légal aux réfugiés et demandeurs d'asile, renforcer la lutte contre la traite des êtres humains, porter l'âge de la responsabilité pénale des mineurs à 12 ans, et enfin retirer la réserve émise à l'article 22 de la Convention des Nations Unies sur les droits de l'enfant. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sri Lanka extends a warm welcome to the delegation of Thailand to the UPR Working Group and thanks them for their comprehensive national report and presentation. We take note of the drafting of the new constitution of Thailand and hope that the constitution will include provisions that will promote and protect human rights and strengthen democracy and the rule of law as well as civil institutions. We are pleased to note that Thailand has reached the status of an upper middle income economy since 2011, and we note the sustained progress made by Thailand in achieving most of the MDGs. We note the steps taken by Thailand to combat the issue of human trafficking, including the ratification of the Palermo Protocol in 2013. Sri Lanka wishes to make the following recommendations to Thailand. 1. Further strengthen measures to ensure equal access to health services for all while giving special attention to the needs of children, women and the elderly. 2. Continue the progressive measures taken to promote the rights of migrant workers and their health. We wish Thailand success in its UPR engagement. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Nepal.
Mr. President, Nepal warmly welcomes the delegation of Thailand. We appreciate the efforts made by Thailand in implementation of the pledges and recommendations of its initial UPR report. Sincerity of efforts is manifest by the submission of a voluntary midterm update on the progress in implementation in 2014. It is encouraging to note that Thailand ratified a number of international human rights treaties with reservations to different human rights instruments, enacted a number of human rights related legislations, and put in place various national action plans in the recent years to create a strengthened environment for better enjoyment of human rights. We note that a de facto moratorium on death penalty is in place since 2009, and the third National Human Rights Plan aims to abolish the death penalty. Thailand's consistent progress in socio-economic development and the people-centric and inclusive perspective of its development plans remain impressive. We commend Thailand's commitment to address political differences through the principles of democracy, rule of law and reconciliation process, and extend our best wishes for successful completion of the constitution-making process. While wishing Thailand a successful UPR, my delegation would like to recommend them to continue efforts to strengthen national human rights institutions and mechanisms. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Myanmar.
Mr. President, my delegation warmly welcomes the Thai delegation led by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Justice. We thank them for the comprehensive national report and their active participation in the review. We are delighted to note that Thailand has taken measures improving the social welfare services for all workers, including migrants and foreign workers. We also take note with satisfaction that a nationwide registration scheme has been implemented to ensure that these workers are protected and provided with welfare under Thai labor law, similar to Thai nationals. Finally, my delegation would like to recommend that Thailand continues its efforts to protect the rights of migrants and foreign workers, particularly to further enhance their safety and welfare. As our close neighbor and a fellow member of the ASEAN, we wish Thailand great success in this current review. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Armenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We welcome the delegation of Thailand and thank for the presentation of the national report. Armenia notes with appreciation the steps taken to ensure access to healthcare services, as well as to reduce maternal and infant mortality rates. We also appreciate the efforts to promote human rights education in the country. We note that there still remain a few major international human rights instruments Thailand is not party to yet, and we recommend first, to accede to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and second, to further expand human rights education and training programs. We wish Thailand a successful review. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last speaker on our list. Please note that all delivered statements will be posted on the UPL extranet. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Chanchao Chayanuki and his delegation for final remarks.
Mr. President, before closing, I would like to ask my colleagues first from Ministry of Justice to talk about the prevention of torture and our efforts to become the party of OPCAT and the protection of human rights defenders. Secondly, from my colleague from Ministry of Social Development and Human Security to talk about the child sex tourism and the early enforced marriage. Third, from Ministry of Education to talk about the cultural rights of ethnic communities.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With regard to the issue of torture, as mentioned earlier, a draft act on the prevention and suppression of torture and enforced disappearances will set up the specific offense on torture and enforced disappearance based on the definition stipulated in the CAT and ICCPED, with the criminal punishment dependent upon the grave nature of the crime. Moreover, the Act creates measures to facilitate an effective investigation, as well as enhance remedial measures, which are not only limited to the financial assistance, but also covers both physical and psychological remedy for the victims. We continue to disseminate knowledge on the Convention Against Torture and its optional protocol, and other international human rights treaties to concerned governmental agencies, centrally and regionally. We have been working closely with various international organizations and civil society to raise awareness on OPCAT among the concerned agencies in order to prepare them to be ready to implement the OPCAT in an effective manner. Moreover, the Rights and Liberty Protection Department and the Central Institute of Forensic Science, in collaboration with the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights and the International Committee of the Red Cross, have been discussing plans to develop a curriculum for forensic investigation to increase effectiveness in investigation and documentation of torture in accordance with the Istanbul Protocol. Focus has been made on capacity building and strengthening relevant government agencies to effectively prevent and investigate the acts of torture as part of the government's effort to address the concern on the issue of impunity. Currently, Ministry of Justice plans to submit for the Cabinet's consideration to ratify OPCAT. On the issue of human rights defenders and lawyers in our country, they are protected under the Thai law in the same way as all persons in Thailand. We are aware of our duty to ensure that human rights defenders and lawyers can carry out their work in a safe and enabling environment. In this regard, Ministry of Justice by the Rights and Liberty Protection Department has established a working committee on development of measures to protect human rights defenders who are at risk of being violated, comprised of government agencies, civil society, international organizations, and academia. In preparation for the mechanism to protect human rights defenders, the committee has studied international standards for protection of human rights defenders, including the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, as well as analyzed legislation and best practice from different countries, in parallel with the evaluation of the current situation on human rights violation towards human rights defenders. A guideline for all authorities, in particular law enforcement agencies, is currently being developed. We believe that with the adoption of the Draft Act on Prevention and Suppression of Torture and Enforced Disappearance, combined with the ratification of the ICCPED, will also strengthen and secure the protection of human rights defenders. Regarding the issue of death penalty, Ministry of Justice started to study possibility of Thailand to abolish death penalty since 5 years ago. The country's intention in this regard was reaffirmed in the Third National Human Rights Plan. Nevertheless, from dialogues across the country, it's shown that more than 80% of the participants disagree with the abolition of death sentence in national laws. Despite the public disagreement, Ministry of Justice continues our effort to seek the possibility to abolish death penalty. In order to achieve this goal, the operational guidelines have been developed with 3 steps of actions. First, study current offense for which only the death penalty is imposed, and explore the possibility to allow the court to use their own power of discretion to decide whether to use the death penalty. Second, abolish the death penalty for certain offenses. And third, abolish the death penalty for all offenses at the end. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on child sex tourism, Department of Tourism, Ministry of Tourism and Sport, and UNODC continue to implement the second phase of its Project Childhood, enhancing law enforcement capacity for national and transnational action to identify and effectively act upon traveling child sex offenders in Thailand. One activity focuses on training and other capacity development needs that will enhance prosecutors and judge capacity of effectively prosecute traveling child sex offenders and protect victims. The curriculum also includes the issue of child pornography and abuse of children online. The first phase of the project has already built capacity of police officers in Thailand to effectively identify and arrest traveling child sex offenders and protect victims. On early and forced marriage. Marriage in Thailand is governed by the Civil and Commercial Code. The minimum age allows for entering into marriage under the Civil and Commercial Code is under 17 years old or lower. If permitted by a court decision, for those under 20 years of age, consent of the parent is needed. Under no circumstance can the court allow marriage between the child and offenders who is older than 18 in the case of statutory rape, namely where the latter had sexual relation with the child under the age of sexual consent of 15 years. In the special case of illegal sexual relations between children, a recent amendment of the Penal Code, which came into effect last 2 years, allowed the court to permit marriage between children aged from 13 to 18 where they consent to do so, and subject to conditions to be imposed by the court. If the court finds subsequently that one of the party has committed rape against the other, the court can impose sanctions accordingly. The same amendment also prohibits the offenders from claiming ignorance of the victim's age. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, in addition to the government's effort to protect human rights of all people, regardless of their race or ethnicity, I would like to highlight some of the government's efforts in promoting cultural rights of ethnic communities. The right to preserve cultural heritage was made concrete as Thailand is becoming party to the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention. The law on the intangible cultural heritage has recently been passed, and a listing of national intangible cultural heritage has been created. The list includes the languages, the traditions, and traditions belonging to some ethnic communities, as the list would serve as a tool to protect and preserve ways of life and cultural identity of ethnic communities, despite the challenges caused by modernization and globalization. The fact that Thailand is home to about 70 ethnic languages suggests that Thailand welcomes local identity and cultural diversity. Thailand's national language policy is a result of 6 years of research by the Royal Institute of Thailand. Researchers found that the multilingual education, or MLE, can greatly improve the school performance of ethnic minority children. That is why another effort to preserve cultural heritage of ethnic communities in Thailand is through the formal education system. A number of primary schools offering 9 years of compulsory education located in the border and marginalized areas have been given special assistance by the Ministry of Education to provide multilingual teaching to ethnic children speaking non-Thai languages. However, a great deal of training is required before teachers are ready to work in the multilingual schools. But the government hopes to expand the multilingual education scheme that had been piloting with the help of NGOs and relevant international organizations. Thank you for your attention, Mr. President.
Mr. President, since we complete our responses, my delegation would like to thank all countries for the constructive comments and for taking time to share your views with us today. Your positive reflection is a great encouragement for all agencies involved. We would certainly continue our efforts. At the same time, we have also taken due note of your concerns. They have made us even more determined to work even harder to address the remaining challenges. My delegation will seriously consider all the recommendations given to us. We hope to accept as many recommendations as possible, but we will take a realistic approach and make sure that the recommendations we decide to accept do correspond with our capacity to implement them. Still, my delegation is confident that we will be able to announce our immediate acceptance to many of the recommendations as they are in line with our fundamental principles, norms, and policies. In fact, many are currently being implemented with some progress. The Cabinet has also most recently approved additional pledges that we will voluntarily implement in the follow-up phase. These include the accession to some pending international treaties, the amendment of a number of laws to make them more consistent with our international obligations and recommendations from treaty bodies, the submission of the voluntary midterm update to the Council as we did for the first cycle, the promotion of human rights education and awareness raising, the promotion of human rights principles with the business sector, and the enhancement of cooperation with civil society and other partners. We will share the details of our voluntary pledges with the Troika so that they are concluded in the report to be adopted this coming Friday. Mr. President, I would like to reiterate our determination to work closely with all stakeholders in the follow-up stage. We also intend to raise awareness of the review outcome and the recommendations that we will accept to the wider public so as to make the implementation more robust, participatory, and successful I thank you.
I thank His Excellency and the delegation for the presentation and participation in this review. The report of the review will be prepared by members of the Troika, namely the representatives of France, El Salvador, and Maldives. In accordance with the new procedure implemented in 2015, the recommendations section will be distributed on Friday, 13th of May for adoption as from 4 p.m. on the same day. The full report, including the summary section, will be circulated by email on Monday, 23rd of May. This brings us to the end of our meeting. We will reconvene at 1 p.m. for the adoption of the recommendations section of the draft reports on Papua New Guinea and Tajikistan. All participants are invited to be in the room on time. The meeting is closed.